We were just finishing up with dinner, as usual. Whatever didn't fit in the dishwasher, we washed by hand. Joyce washed, and I dried. I shook the towel, folded it neatly, and hung it on the hook. "Don't go anywhere, Jeff. I have something for you," my wife said. I was surprised. This was unusual, so I sat down in my usual place in the kitchen and waited. She returned after about 20 seconds, holding a thick envelope in her hands. Placing it on the table, she pushed it towards me. "What is this?" I asked, taking the envelope and looking at it. "Read it, and you'll find out for yourself," she answered. She seemed a little nervous. I looked at the front of the envelope. In addition to my name, in the top corner was the name of the law firm. I didn't like it at all. I looked up at Joyce. "What is this about, Joyce?" I asked again. "Open it, Jeff. Everything is written there." I tore the edge of the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. The title on the title page told me exactly what I feared most: lawsuit for divorce. I looked at Joyce again. "What the hell, Joyce? What's happening?" "I'm filing for divorce, Jeff." She seemed unable to say anything more, but her expression was hard and far from friendly. "Why?" That was the only thing that came to my mind. Everything was raging inside me, and I was desperately trying to understand why this was happening. I'm unhappy. I want more from life. Our boys are almost adults, and I will turn 40 in December. For 20 years I cooked, cleaned, did laundry, and performed all the duties expected of a wife. Now, I want to live for myself. Did I do something wrong? I asked, hoping for at least some explanation. "No, Jeff. You were a good husband and provided for us. It's not enough. We got married when I was too young. I missed out on part of my youth, and I'm not going to miss anything anymore. If I'm lucky, I still have 40 years ahead of me. I want them to be exciting, rich, and meaningful. But this won't happen to you." "Damn it, Joyce, is this an early hormonal pause?" "No," she snapped, clearly angry. I was stunned. We're only 3 weeks away from our 20th anniversary, and she's saying it's over. Was our life meaningless and unfulfilling? What the hell? I had no words. I shook my head, realizing that I simply didn't know what to say. "Just sign where the bookmarks are, Jeff. Let's do everything right." I don't want to argue. I looked at the papers in front of me. Small red stickers with the inscription sign here stuck out along the edges of the documents. I took a deep breath. "Joyce, is this the final decision? No talking? No chance to change your mind?" She nodded with a grim expression. At least, she herself clearly did not enjoy it. "So I'm just a worthless husband, right?" "No, Jeff. It's about me. What I want. I dedicated 20 years to you and the children. Now, it's my time. So it's only about you. Fuck me. Fuck our sons. The main thing is Joyce. Don't be nasty, Jeff. This doesn't sound like you. I made a decision. Whether you agree or not, we're getting a divorce, so just sign the papers." "Damn it, how could it not be so?" I exploded. "You think I'm going to let you get away with more than your fair share? You're wrong. I won't sign anything until Pete checks every last letter." "Great. Have Pete send them to Oksana Durovich at Wendler Milton." "The address is on the envelope," she replied irritably. We were both already speaking in a raised voice. "Where are the boys?" I asked. "I need to talk to them. I gave them money so they could go out to dinner. I already talked to them this morning after you left for work. They are aware. I assume you're going to file for alimony?" "Only for Ross. Matt is already 18. They decided to stay in the house with me. I've already moved your things to the guest room." "Well, we'll see about that later. Half of this house belongs to me. Today on the market, it costs $500,000, but there are only $80,000 left on the mortgage. If you want him, shell out $210,000 and he's yours. Don't be stupid, Jeff. Where will I get that kind of money? Just remortgage the house. If you want to keep it, pay for it." With these words, I stood up, pushed back my chair, and left the kitchen. Going upstairs, I looked into the guest room. There were my shirts hanging there, t-shirts, socks, and underwear in the drawers. and my toiletries laid out on the dresser. I was shaking with rage. I needed to calm down and collect my thoughts. I wanted to smash something to hell. I wanted to lash out at someone. I had always believed that I would never lay my hand on Joyce, but now I was damn close to breaking that rule. She just told me that I wasted 20 years of my life loving and providing for her. It had no value to her except as a sacrifice for which she went. I sat on the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. The house was strangely quiet. I wonder if she left. What to do? The boys were not home, but they had cell phones, and I could contact them without discussing it with Joyce. I wondered if she told them the same story she told me. I wanted to know what they thought about all this. I thought about Joyce and why she decided to do this. She was an attractive woman with a good job. She dressed elegantly and had a charisma that many other women could not boast. Quite tall and slender, with exceptional posture, but without the stiffness that some people have. I thought she loved me. At least that's what she said, and I had no reason not to believe her. We got married when I graduated from local college. Then she was a beautiful blonde, but 4 years ago, when she returned to work, she decided to become a brunette again. Obviously, she believed that with dark hair, she would be taken more seriously. But this evening, standing in the kitchen, I saw a completely different side of Joyce Nelson. I sat and realized that I no longer belonged to this house. Now I was a stranger here, or at best a guest. There was no point in staying here. I went downstairs to the garage to get my suitcases. It was necessary to gather the essentials and find a hotel or motel for the next few days. I didn't want to stay here a minute longer. It took almost an hour to get ready. I packed so that I could live alone. I'll pick up the rest tomorrow when Joyce is at work. And today, I just had to leave. I took 2 suitcases out to the garage and put them in the trunk. Then he found an empty box for papers, returned to the office, turned off the laptop, printer, and scanner, and put them in the box. Joyce never showed up. As I was about to leave, I looked up and saw that the door to our bedroom was closed. Did she know I was leaving? There was only one way to be sure. With some effort, I took off my wedding ring and placed it right in the middle of the kitchen table. In mid-May, at 8 in the evening, it was still light. On Monday evening, I was driving through the city, not knowing where I was going. Finally, I pulled over to the side of the road to think. Our house was on the western hill, overlooking the Columbia River. There were orchards and rare vineyards all around, and the landscape from above was simply stunning. We bought this house 10 years ago at a bargain price, believing we would never leave. My office, Valley Computer Services, was located next to Wenatchee Valley College, which was convenient because students were actively using computers. But the hotels on that side of town were too close to the main BNSF railroad line to be an option, so I drove to the east side, to East Wenatchee, and found a motel near a shopping center and a bridge over the river. The rooms available sign was on the sign, and I checked in. Clean, quiet it will do for the first time. I barely slept that night. Joyce's words made my head spin. I spent hours replaying the past 20 years in my mind, trying to figure out what went wrong. I shed a lot of tears, realizing what I was losing. Everything seemed hopeless. Joyce left me with not a single thread to grab onto. By 6 a.m. Tuesday morning, I was still none the wiser. I got up, turned on the local news, and went to the bathroom to do my usual morning routine. By 6:30, I felt a little better, and I went to a small restaurant in the shopping center. The promotional breakfast looked quite edible, so I ordered it with black coffee. Surprisingly, I had an appetite. Our store opened for customers at 8:30, but most corporate customers knew that someone was there by 8. Usually I arrived a little earlier, but today I was already there at 7:30. I had a lot to handle, but first and foremost was to catch the owner, Terry Jackson, before he got involved. I was going to tell him what was going on and warn him that I would need time to see a lawyer and other things. Terry entered the office at 5 minutes to 8 and looked at me in surprise. "Did you fall out of bed, Jeff?" He grinned. "No, it's not that simple. Do you have a couple of minutes? I'll tell you." I told him my whole story, and Terry immediately became serious. Damn, Jeff, this is cruel. No tears? Nothing? I shook my head. Not a single one. Anyway, I need to talk to the lawyer and go home while Joyce is at work to pick up the rest of my things. Sorry if this gets you in trouble, Terry. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Do what you need to do. If something urgent happens, I'll call you on your mobile. Great, thank you. This helps me out a lot. Terry was still shaking his head when I left his office and went to the back of the store to finish the job I had started. He and I discussed the possibility of me entering into a share of the business, but things have not yet come to concrete steps. And probably, for the better, it would only complicate the divorce process. I talked to Joyce about it, but to be honest, she wasn't particularly enthusiastic. Now I wondered, had she been planning her departure even then? I called Pete Mahone's law office and left a message on their answering machine, asking them to call me on my cell phone as soon as possible. He was usually in the office a little before 9, so I had time to wait. I decided to go home and pick up some more things. On the way, I stopped at Staples, bought a 5-pack of paper boxes, and pulled up to the house at 5 minutes to 9. I was just finishing packing the first box when my cell phone rang. "Did you call?" Pete spoke without a preamble. We knew each other from school and often played golf in the summer. He was an integral part of Wenatchee's life and maintained a successful legal practice, handling both civil and criminal cases. "Yes. Do you have time for me soon? We need to talk. It's quite urgent." "Certainly. I'll find time. What's happened?" "Joyce has filed for divorce," I said simply. "What? I can't believe it. What the hell happened?" "Apparently, I'm not interesting and exciting enough for her. She believes that she has done her part in raising her family and now wants to leave. I will, of course, paraphrase a little. Damn it, Jeff. What's wrong with her? Is this due to hormonal pause? According to her, no. Anyway, can we meet? I need representation." "Yes, I'll have free time by 1:30 in the afternoon. Will it do?" "Great. Thanks a lot, buddy. It's easier just by talking to you." "Who represents Joyce?" "Oksana. Something like that, from the Wendler Milton Company. Do you know her?" "Yes. She's normal. At least not the kind who tears man apart. See you at 1:30. Now I need to move something. Thanks again, Pete." I hung up and sighed with relief. He sat down on the edge of the bed again and looked around. Tears flowed out of nowhere again. I wondered how long this would last. I wasn't thinking clearly, but when I think about it, it wasn't surprising. It all happened quite recently. I didn't even realize how much stuff I had. I needed to start sorting them out if I wanted to get it done before meeting Pete. Before the meeting, I grabbed a quick sandwich from a local cafe near Pete's office and arrived on time. He was already waiting for me in the reception area, came up, shook my hand, and put his arm around my shoulders as we walked into his office. He did everything he could to make me feel better. I handed him the papers, but he didn't open them right away. "Tell me what you remember from your conversation with Joyce last night," Pete began. I conveyed everything I could remember, warning that I was in a state of shock for the first few minutes. He nodded understandingly. When I finished, he took the documents out of the envelope. "So Joyce wanted you to sign them right away?" "Yes, I almost signed, but I came to my senses in time and said that we would talk through lawyers." "How did she react to this?" "I think she was angry, but not very much." "I need time to study this, Jeff. In the meantime, think about what you want from this divorce. You have the same rights as Joyce, so don't worry about what you're supposed to. Just write what you want. We're talking about property, alimony, custody, savings, everything. And then I will sort everything out, and we will decide what is important and what can be used for bargaining." "Okay," I sighed. We both sat back in our chairs. "Do you know how much Joyce earns at Koch Motors?" asked Pete. To be honest, no. She's been filing separately for 3 years now, since she returned to work." "Remind me what she does there." "She started in the credit department. Now she is an administrative assistant in the same department. As far as I understand, she has made good progress." "Does she contribute to the family budget?" "Yes, Transfers $1,000 every 2 weeks. He's been doing this since he started working. And you haven't seen her tax returns? Pete looked puzzled. No, I serve mine myself. Everything is simple for me, and someone from Cock is helping her with her papers. Interesting, was all Pete said. Does she have her own 401k? Yes, she and the company contribute money there. Do you know how much has accumulated there? I shook my head. I have no idea. What about the boys? How do they feel about this? I haven't talked to them yet. Yesterday, I was too overwhelmed, and today I spent the whole day sorting out things. I'll talk to them this evening. I hope Joyce didn't turn them against me. Pete grinned. I doubt she'll succeed, Jeff. They respect you, as much as a father can. Do you think they'll want to stay with Joyce? The first thing that comes to mind is pragmatism. Who cooks, washes, takes care of them when you're away? Most likely, they will decide that, for now, it will be more convenient. But this may change as they get older. Yes, probably. Have you checked your bank accounts? Maybe something has happened to them since yesterday. Yes, this morning. Nothing unusual. I transferred half of our savings to a personal account. I was also planning to stop the transfer of salaries to the general account. Don't do this, Jeff. Let her take the first step. Savings are fine, but leave the general account as is. Now she will have to pay the bills, and $2,000 a month is not so much. Understood. Anything else? Not yet. The main thing is to make the list that I talked about, and I'll do the checking. I'll try to get back to you in a day or two. In the meantime, don't talk to Joyce and take only your things from the house. Don't give Oksana any reason. We're the good guys, remember? He kept a serious expression on his face. Yes, sure. Nice guys. I didn't think so, but I was sure Pete would figure it out. If anyone could save this situation, it was him. That evening, I called my sons. They were together, and the three of us organized a conversation. So, I think Mom already told you what was happening yesterday morning, I began. Yes, Matt replied. This sucks, Dad. I don't understand. She couldn't give us a clear reason why she wants to divorce you. Just some nonsense about how she wants to realize her potential and find meaning in life. Where does she even get all this nonsense from? Easy with your expressions, guys, I said calmly. To be honest, I myself don't understand where it came from and when it started. I can't remember anything in our lives that would suggest that she was unhappy or dissatisfied with anything. It's like she just woke up yesterday morning and decided that this is how it should be. We didn't notice anything either, Dad, Ross interjected. I think this is the strangest thing, guys. None of us even suspected that she was unhappy or dissatisfied. At first, I thought that maybe I was just too inattentive and didn't notice, but now that you didn't see anything either, I'm just at a loss. Dad, Ross, and I, we decided to stay here for now. Ross has another year of school left, and I'm leaving for Eugene in September. This seems to be the best option at the moment. But that doesn't mean we're on Mom's side, okay? You don't need to explain, guys. I understand, and I think this is truly the best option for you. I don't know where I'll live yet, so at least you'll have a permanent address. Thank you, Dad. Glad you understand us. Maybe we can find out what's going on with Mom. Who knows? But you don't have to feel obligated to spy on her. In the end, it's not that big of a deal. Your mother has decided to divorce me, and it seems that nothing will convince her. So I'm getting ready to be single again by the end of the year. I don't like this, Dad, Ross said, and I heard his voice waver. This is wrong. How could she do this? Do you think she has someone? Damn, Ross, where did you get that from? If she has someone, he is hidden very well. But if this is so, sooner or later, he will show up when the divorce is finalized. We'll find out one way or another. For now, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Honestly, Dad, you take it all so calmly. I'd go crazy, Matt said. What's the point, Matt? It won't change anything. On the contrary, it can only worsen the situation. So for now, just control yourself. Try to get along with your mother and move on with your life. You have the summer ahead before you have to go back to school, so we'll definitely be spending time together on the weekends. Okay, Dad, Matt said quietly. I understood that it was hard for both of them, and all I could do was not to aggravate their condition. Now I had to pretend a little, but it was necessary. We said goodbye after I promised that the three of us would call each other every evening. I wanted to keep in touch with them and spend time with them on the weekends. It was necessary not only for them, but also for me as a kind of therapy. When I closed the phone, I realized that I needed to make a few more calls. I was sure that my parents knew nothing. It will be a shock to them, and they will have 1,000 questions. I didn't want this conversation, but I couldn't put it off. Hi, Mom, this is Jeff. I know who it is, Jeffrey. I've recognized your voice for more than 40 years, she answered with a warm note in her voice. Mom, I'm afraid I have bad news. Joyce filed for divorce. Last night she handed me the papers. I'm afraid she's serious. I know how much you loved her, and I didn't want you to find out about it from someone else. Oh, Jeffrey, I can't believe it. Why? Did you do something wrong? I patiently explained what Joyce had said last night and how much it had taken me by surprise. I didn't even suspect that she was unhappy. Mom was very upset, and after a few words, she handed the phone to her father. I heard everything, Jeff. I can't imagine what came over her. She was so reasonable, a magnificent mother, and, as you told me, a wonderful wife. I don't understand. Me too, Dad. It may be some time before we understand what prompted her to do this. Or maybe we'll never find out. The boys stay with her because it makes more sense. They are unhappy, but they understand that this is better. We talked some more and I promised to keep them updated, even if the news wasn't good. I also agreed that the boys would call them once a week. Now I had to call Joyce's parents. I was sure they already knew everything, but we were very close to them, especially her father, Mike. We hit it off from the start, and I didn't want to lose touch with them, even if their daughter left me. Oh, hi, Nora, this is Jeff. Oh, Jeff, I'm so sorry. I just don't understand Joyce. What is she thinking about? How could she destroy a family? She said it wasn't your fault. But if it was, then it was her fault. I'm so angry at her that I can hardly contain myself. And her father is just furious. He thinks she is taking something. I think it will be some time before we understand what is happening to her, Nora. But she's determined to get a divorce, so I'm doing what I need to do to protect myself and the boys. I don't want a divorce, but Joyce is in the driver's seat, and she's the one who started this whole thing. I hope that at least everything will go without scandals. Jeff, promise me that you won't leave us. We love you and the boys, and despite what our crazy daughter did, please don't forget about us. This promise is easy to keep. I feel like you and Mike are like my second parents, and right now I need all the support I can get. Thank you for this. Nora handed the phone to her husband. Mike Fielding spoke, depressed and unhappy. How are you holding up, son? His greeting was familiar, but there was sorrow in his voice. He called me son from the very beginning of our relationship. He was almost as much a father to me as my own. Whatever it was, chemistry or something else, he and I immediately hit it off, and anyone who knew us could attest to that. I'm holding on, Mike. It won't be easy, but I've almost decided. If she wants it, then so be it. All that remains is to agree on the details. I don't understand this girl. I would never have thought that she was capable of this. She can't even clearly explain to us the reason. How then could you understand her? Mike, we can talk about this endlessly, but nothing will change. As I told Nora, maybe someday we'll find out what made her do it. But by then, it won't matter anymore, right? We talked a little about my immediate plans, my promise to make sure the boys kept in touch with them. But the most important thing for him was that I myself would call and visit them just as often, regardless of the outcome of the divorce. This calmed him down a little, but he did not become any happier. We ended the conversation, and he wished me luck. It's been a little over a day since Joyce broke the news to me. Much had already happened, but much more was to come. I have completed the necessary formalities. Now it is time to get down to the details. I eagerly awaited Pete's call to let me know what steps to take next. I made a list of everything I needed to consider and was sure I didn't miss anything. And if you suddenly forgot something, then it's probably not that important. On Wednesday, I tried to fully concentrate on work. I slept a little better than the previous night, mainly because I was making up for the lack of sleep from Monday. Despite everything, I felt more rested, alert, and, surprisingly, in a better mood. I picked up the local newspaper in hopes of finding an advertisement for furnished apartments for rent. I didn't know if there were any in Wenatchee, but with the influx of seasonal and migrant workers picking cherries, the chances seemed doubtful to me. However, I decided to give it a try. I was busy cleaning out my hard drive, which was full of junk and outdated programs. It seemed like nothing had ever been removed from it, so I had to painstakingly figure out which programs were still relevant and which ones could safely be scrapped. I was almost finished when Terry came into the office and sat down on the edge of the table. "You know, Jeff," he began, "I have a summer house north of Orondo. Usually Tina and I go there every weekend, but this year her arthritis has gotten so bad that it's difficult for her to move around. So I thought, maybe you can live there for a while until you sort out the divorce. You can't live in a motel for long." "Oh hell, Terry, that's a very generous offer, but I don't want to impose. I know how dear this house is to you." "Yes, I know. But firstly, it is not free, and secondly, you will let me stay there on the weekend if Tina stays with her sister. And it's not a good idea to have an empty house either. If you're there, there's less chance of some skanks breaking in. So this works for me too." "That's damn generous, Terry. How much do you want for rent?" "Well, let's do it for 500 a month," he squinted, trying to understand whether he had overestimated the price. "Are you kidding? You could rent it out for 500 a week. This is a wonderful place and right by the river. Well, why are we arguing? 500 a month, and I will visit you on weekends if Tina is not alone." "Are you serious?" "Damn it, of course. Thank you, Terry. This makes my life a lot easier. Just one thing. Will it be possible to take the boys on weekends? As far as I remember, there will be a place for them there, and they will not disturb anyone." "Certainly. Let them sleep on the veranda. There's an old cot there. At night, a cool breeze blows from the river. I myself have spent the night there more than once." "Great. When can I move?" "Well, look, Tina's sister will come to see her this weekend. So come on Saturday, let's take my truck, load up your things and move them, and you'll buy beer." He laughed. "Agreed. Damn, Terry, you just saved me. Thank you so much." "Come on, Jeff. Divorce is not a cheap thing. You're a great worker, and I want you to one day buy this business from me so Tina and I can move to Arizona for the winter. It's always easier for her there. I'll unpack on Friday night and be ready when you pick me up on Saturday morning." "Damn, dude, let's load up on Friday night and go straight away. Then we'll have more time to drink on Saturday." "Okay," I laughed. "Just tell me when we're leaving and I'll be ready." Terry Jackson founded Valley Computer Services almost 30 years ago, when personal computers were just beginning to come into everyday use. He was a man ahead of his time, so he quickly carved out a niche for servicing the first cars. He looked like a typical good old guy, but had excellent business acumen and a keen sense of service. It is thanks to this Valley Computer became the largest and best computer company in Wenatchee. The firm looked modest on the outside, but behind the facade lay the commercial service contracts that formed the basis of the business. City agencies, government agencies, and commercial companies all relied on Terry to keep their systems running smoothly. I was his main employee, Jeff Nelson. I had the necessary experience to solve problems and satisfy clients. Terry was not shy about charging good money for our services, but when a critical situation arose, the customers knew that either he or I would help them out. It was thanks to the high level of service that Terry could afford to pay me above the market average. I made a steady income of $60,000 a year plus a share of the profits. This made the work not only profitable, but also interesting, although for Joyce, it still remained small business. I stopped trying to convince her otherwise a long time ago. It wasn't worth it. I decided not to take the boys or Rondo on the first weekend. I wanted to make sure for myself first that there would be enough space in the house, even if Terry and I were there at the same time. I did not want to inconvenience either my friend or the owner of the house. Pete called me before lunch on Thursday. "Hey, Jeff, can you come to the office this afternoon? We need to discuss something." "Of course, will it suit you? We'll meet at 4. Don't forget your list." I smiled at the receptionist Mahoney asked, introduced myself, and waited a couple of minutes until he came out to meet me. We walked down the corridor to his office. "Well, where are we now?" I asked. "We have several questions that require answers. First, I will ask Joyce, through her lawyer Oksana, to provide the latest 3 tax returns. In return, I will have to give her yours for the same period. Do you have any objections?" "No, I have nothing to hide. I'll bring it tomorrow morning." "Great. This is the first step. Now the second one. Do you have an education savings account for boys?" "Yes, it is decorated separately. Last time I checked, everything was fine there. Matt, this year you won't need much. He has an academic scholarship at the University of Oregon, which will cover approximately 75% expenses." "Great, it's already decided." Step 3. Joyce's car, did she buy it, or is she leasing it? "Not really. She leases it to Cock. She has some kind of special program there." "Does she pay for insurance, gas, maintenance, and the leasing itself?" "I think yes. I'm definitely not paying for it." "Fine. Fourth question. Do you have other properties besides your main home?" "No, for now. In the future, I will inherit half of the family gardens after the death of my parents. My sister and I will split them." "Understood. It's not a problem. As long as the parents are alive and well, this asset will not participate in the division of property." "All this concerns division of property during a divorce, right?" "Exactly. If the case goes to court, the judge will require full disclosure of family finances to determine who gets what. But I hope it doesn't come to that. If we can reach an agreement without trial, it will be easier for everyone." I nodded. This was clear to me. It would be much cheaper to resolve the issue among ourselves. I was sure Joyce thought so too. "So where are we, Pete?" "I wanted to make an appointment with Joyce and Oksana, but I changed my mind. I think it's worth it wait until we have their list of assets and tax returns. It is quite possible that there will be something unexpected which will tip the situation in our favor. For now, let's look at your list of demands. After this, all that remains is to wait when the necessary information arrives." "What if Joyce refuses to submit tax returns?" "I doubt that will happen. Oksana will explain to her what we can request from the court, and then it will put her at a disadvantage." Pete ran through my list and nodded approvingly. "At first glance, here nothing controversial. Ordinary things. I noticed that you don't expect to pay alimony or child support. It could be not so simple, but we'll figure something out. It might take a little haggle. To be honest, Pete, I understand that, most likely, I can't avoid child support. But here child support for her, this is for me a fundamental question. This is her decision, not mine. And if she demands alimony, it might ruin the whole deal." "I got you. But let's first find out how much does Joyce actually earn. I will also request information about her car expenses. They must be indicated in the tax return. If Cock pays for her car, we will take this into account in the agreement." I spent almost an hour in the office with my friend and lawyer. His calmness and professionalism kept me from getting upset. He had a strategy, and I quickly realized that I would be much better off leaving this matter in his hands than losing my temper and getting angry unnecessarily. I must admit that at times I was overcome with anger. This feeling grew within me as I thought more and more about what Joyce had done. There was no word from Pete on Friday, and by that day Terry and I had already loaded my things into his truck and mine. Out back, heading to Orondo. The drive up the river only took half an hour, and unloading the truck and my car only took a few minutes. The summer house was a small cottage with 2 bedrooms, a large living room, 1 bathroom, a medium-sized kitchen, and a large covered porch that could be insulated with storm windows. In the backyard, there were several outbuildings for storing things. I put the extra things in one of the sheds. I chose the second bedroom for myself, leaving the main bedroom for Terry to use for his visits. We argued a little about this, but in the end, I convinced him that it would make me more comfortable. In the end, he gave up. We had dinner at a small BBQ restaurant in town, washing down the meal with a couple of beers. The conversation was light, and we tried not to talk about the mess that was going on in my personal life. He showed me a laundromat and a convenience store, but other than seasonal fruit stands, there weren't many places to shop. I decided to keep a thermal container in the car and do some shopping in town before heading back to the cottage. That day in Wenatchee, I bought a package of MGD, and we put it in the refrigerator in the cottage. Returning from the restaurant, Terry and I sat on the veranda with a couple of cold bottles, just enjoying the evening's peace and view. It's very calm here, Terry. Now I understand why you like to spend the summer here. It's not bad here in winter either, he answered. It's damn quiet, but after all this fuss and business, I'm even glad for the silence. I have satellite TV, so entertainment is no problem. A couple of years ago, I replaced all the windows and insulated the house properly, so it's warm and cozy here in winter. There is enough wood for the fireplace. Tina and I used to come here just to be alone. Damn, it's a pity that now she can't come like before. Over the weekend in mid-May, we got the cottage in order, mowing the grass, weeding, touching up the trim, and getting the house ready for the summer season. In July and August, after 10 in the morning, it is already too hot for such work. I usually don't enjoy weekends like this, but this time I enjoyed 2 days full of work, beer, barbecue, and conversation. Besides, I was indebted to Terry for his hospitality and felt I had to do my bit. Now it fell on me to maintain order in the cottage. On Monday morning, Terry and I returned to Wenatchee and opened the store before 8 in the morning. I noticed that the traffic was much busier, especially on the East Wenatchee side. The city grew, and with the beginning of the cherry picking season, migrant workers and special equipment were bustling everywhere. Local residents are already accustomed to these cycles associated with gardening. Cherries, peaches, apricots, pears, apples. I was always amazed at the huge amount of fruit grown in this small valley. Memorial Day weekend was approaching, and we planned to close the store for 3 days. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to take the boys to Orondo with me. And if not, I have enough to do in the workshop, so maybe I'll work for a day or two to catch up. In my free time, I studied PLC programmable logic controllers. I was wondering if we should include them in the service list. These devices have become an integral part of packaging plant equipment. Filling machines, color sorters, weighing controllers, conveyors, washers, all this required electronic control to synchronize work. However, conditions in the packing houses were harsh, with water and refrigeration everywhere. Fruits coming from the hot fields in containers had to be quickly cooled to maintain their freshness. Water and cold are the worst enemies of electronic equipment. Many older systems required replacement with modern, sealed units designed specifically for such conditions. I haven't decided yet whether this market is right for us. Terry left the decision up to me, and then we had to discuss it. We never had enough work. Terry supported my idea of hiring college students for the summer to do simple tasks. For example, disassembling and organizing data on a hard drive, which I did last week, would be an ideal job for a student. The school year has just ended, and we posted a notice on the Computer Technology Department board. In response, we received more than 100 applications. "Well, Mr. Hothead, what will you do now?" Terry grinned. I groaned and shook my head. "I guess I'll have to sort through the resumes, pick out a few of the best candidates, and start calling. We hire the first 2 suitable ones, but leave the rest of the resumes in reserve if one of them fails." "Yes, that sounds reasonable. By August, we will definitely have a couple of smart guys," he chuckled. "You know what, Terry, let's argue. I put the packaging MGD that by next Monday, I will find at least one, and maybe both. You're in. Just remember, bottles, not cans," he laughed again. I went through the stack of applications and was able to whittle the list down by more than 20 people. Some didn't qualify, and a couple people didn't realize it was a summer job and not a permanent one. And then an idea came to my mind. On Tuesday morning, I called the college and asked to speak with the head of the computer science department. Luckily, Mr. Drummond was there. "Mr. Drummond, I want to hire some of your students for summer work. I have almost 80 applications. We need to weed them out somehow. Could you tell me the names of the best students from your courses?" "I guess I can. Give me a minute, I'll look at my notes." It didn't take him long to give me an answer. "You know, Mr. Nelson, this is very unusual, but I will send you a list of the top 10 students by email. No ratings, just names. I take it you will be able to match them with the applications submitted." "Yes, that's quite enough. Thanks for your help, and I will keep this information confidential." "Good luck to you. I hope you find what you're looking for," he said before hanging up. 10 minutes later, an email appeared on the email screen with a list of 10 students, but without their grades. I printed it out and started checking names against applications. Not all 10 from the list applied, but 7 people were among the applicants. This pack of beer was getting closer and closer to being mine. I started calling students that same day. I decided to conduct 2 interviews a day until Thursday and the last one on Friday. Over the course of Tuesday morning, I contacted the first 2 candidates and scheduled interviews. By the time I finished interviewing the last candidate on Friday morning, I was confident that at least 5 of them would do the job and be an asset to the company. Now it's time to make a decision. I videotaped each interview with the candidate's permission. There are 7 recordings in total, each between 40 and 50 minutes long. I put the 7 DVDs and my records in my briefcase and headed to the cottage. That evening, I decided to watch interviews with the 2 candidates I considered the weakest, and a surprise awaited me. The first was a young man who was damn confident for someone with no experience. I didn't have to ask many technical questions for him to realize that he still had a lot to learn. Watching the interview once again finally convinced me that he needed to gain experience, and we did not have the time or resources to train him. The second interview opened my eyes. I watched it, then looked at my notes, and then watched it again. She was a young girl. She was painfully shy, and I had to make a lot of effort to get her to talk, to find out what she knew and what she was capable of. At some point, it even seemed to me that she was about to cry under the pressure of the interview. But if you listen carefully, she was very good at her job. It was just very difficult for her to express her thoughts. I put the disc aside. By the time I watched all 7 interviews, it was almost 1 in the morning and I was tired. After brushing my teeth, I climbed into the comfortable, soft bed in the cottage. I think I fell asleep in less than a minute. The next morning was Saturday, and I wasn't expecting Terry or my sons to arrive. Perhaps the boys would arrive on Sunday, but they already had Saturday planned, and they apologized in advance that they would not be able to come to the cottage. It seemed to me that they did not yet realize what a wonderful place this was, but they would soon see it for themselves when they arrived. I ate breakfast juice, banana, and cereal while the coffee simmered in the coffee maker. Then he inserted the disc with the interview of that girl into the laptop again and watched it again. I wondered, perhaps appearance also played a role. Was I really making my decision while looking at a plain-looking girl in baggy, ill-fitting clothes in dull, earthy tones? For this job, her shyness was not a critical factor. She would have little to no contact with people, but she would still need to interact with me and Terry. I found her name on the list. It was first. Since the list was not in alphabetical order, I assumed it was based on academic performance. If so, then she was the best among all the candidates. Jonna Ardian. I wonder if I can find out anything more about her. I decided to take direct action and call Mr. Drummond. I found 2 Drummonds in the phone book, wrote down their numbers, and dialed the first one. "Good morning, Mr. Drummond. If I'm not mistaken, you're a computer science professor at a college?" "Yes, that's right." "Great. It's Jeff Nelson again, sir. I'm calling about a student, Jonna Ardian. What can you tell us about her?" "This is a very unusual request, Mr. Nelson. I don't usually discuss my students with outsiders. I understand, but I need to get a better idea of her skills. The interview didn't go very well, but I think she's really talented. She's just very reserved. Am I right in thinking that she was at the top of your class? Yes, she is incredibly shy, almost to the point of being phobic, one might say. I've never been able to figure out why, but she's a borderline genius nonetheless. I was about to weed her out after the interview, but then I realized that perhaps I was making a mistake. Is she a stable person? I mean, can she work in a team? Yes, you don't need to worry about it. She keeps to herself and has few friends, but among her peers, she is quite in her place. I'm glad to hear it. I think I'll give her a chance. She didn't shine at the interview, but your words made me think that maybe I have a hidden talent on my hands. I think you are very insightful, Mr. Nelson. I don't think she will disappoint you. In fact, I'm sure it will greatly surprise you. Thank you for being so candid, sir. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you'll be interested to know how your students fared over the summer, so I'll get back to you later and let you know. That would be very helpful. Thank you. And once again, I ask you to maintain confidentiality. I hung up the phone with a smile on my lips. I wonder how useful Jan Ardian will be. When I looked through the remaining 6 discs, choosing the second candidate was not difficult. He was a classic botanist. The only thing missing was a pocket for pens and horned glasses. If my assessment is correct, Jimmy Rideout will be Jana's running mate this summer. I was pretty sure they wouldn't annoy each other, or perhaps they won't intersect at all. When I walked into the workshop on Monday morning, Terry was already there. Okay, Terry, put the MGD box in the refrigerator. I'll pick him up on Friday afternoon on my way to the dacha. You're damn confident, he chuckled. Yes, I simplified the process a little and asked the teacher to email me a list of the top 10 students. After interviews, I have selected 2 people I want to hire. Can you tell me who they are? Certainly. The girl is Jana Ardian, the best student in the computer science course. The guy is Jimmy Rideout. He is a born specialist. I think they'll both do great. Do you want to talk to them first? Nope. You know what you're doing. Besides, they will work with you more than with me. So call them and let them know they got the job. They can start even tomorrow. I smiled broadly at Terry and thanked him. 2 phone calls and both students agreed to come to the workshop at 1 p.m. for an introductory briefing. It was nice to complete this stage. Due to work and the employee selection process, I haven't thought much about personal problems these days. It was actually a relief because Pete hadn't called me and, come to think of it, we hadn't spoken in a week. I was almost done with the new hire orientation when the phone rang. It was Pete. Hey, Pete, you must be psychic. I was just wondering when I would hear from you. Well, I'm calling. Can you come to the office for a meeting? I have something very interesting to talk about. When? Can you do it right now? How about half an hour? I'm finishing up orientation for 2 new employees. Certainly. Waiting for you. I wondered what Pete meant by interesting. These 2 look like they can handle it, I thought. They asked a lot of questions, but smart questions, to the point. I showed them what we were working on, what jobs we were doing in the workshop, and they quickly understood the processes and procedures. He spoke about contract work with various clients and about site visits in which they might participate. Jana seemed a little wary at first, but I explained that they wouldn't work on their own until I was sure they could handle it. I arrived at Pete's office at 5 minutes to 5, and, as always, the secretary informed him of my arrival. He immediately came out of the office and greeted me as usual. This time we went into a small meeting room. My office is a mess. Papers everywhere. Give me a minute. I'll take your file and coffee. I'll be right back. He kept his word, returning with 2 cups of coffee and a folder under his arm. So, how was your week, Jeff? Luckily, I was busy. I hired 2 students for the summer, so I had to do a bunch of interviews. In general, it was even for the better, otherwise I would have only thought about it, I said, nodding at the folder. Yes. Well, I have news for you. You said you had no idea how much Joyce makes at Koch Motors. No, I don't. I think 40,000, maybe 50 a year. She's in management now, so she probably gets a decent salary. Decent is not the right word. Your wife made about $87,000 last year, including bonus, and will likely surpass that amount this year. Damn it, are you kidding? Where was all this going? That's a very good question, Jeff. Damn good. In addition, her supposedly leased car only costs her the taxable portion, and she writes off even part of these expenses when she uses the car for work purposes. Looks like Joyce was hiding something from you, buddy. Not much like the behavior of a devoted and honest wife. I'm shocked. I never would have thought. Has this been going on for a long time? I think yes. Her salary is increased by bonuses based on the amount of loans she takes out and the interest rates she manages to set. With the volume that passes through their dealership each year, even 0.5% can have a serious impact on profits. The credit department is a separate revenue center and very profitable. Last year, her bonus was $18,000 after taxes. My God, who is this woman? Joyce Nelson is a highly paid businesswoman with a very promising future. She's due for a promotion, I think. She'll already be earning 6 figures next year, if not this year. She just doesn't really want to share it. Well, now a lot has become clear. I have become unnecessary, an obstacle, a stumbling block to her career. Not very pleasant to realize, right? I sighed. Pete shook his head. I admit I have never encountered anything like this. It's so cold, so calculated that I don't even know what to say. One thing is for sure, when we sit down with Joyce and Oksana, it will change everything. She will pay you child support. How do you like this start? Secondly, she will have to explain where all this money went. If she is hiding them somewhere, then she will have to reveal it. Otherwise, she will be in serious trouble with the court. This could get very ugly, Jeff. Her lawyer will probably tell her that we know all this. She can't hide anything, right? No. You're right. She paid taxes on all of this income, according to her returns. There are questionable deductions and benefits that may not pass muster, but at least all income received from Cock Motors was declared. But everything else is unknown to us. Everything else. Income from other sources. What other sources? Pete shrugged. Previously, it was customary to give kickbacks for attracting clients. I doubt Cock would approve of this, but if Joyce is greedy enough, she could try to pull it off on her own. How can we find out about this? We can't. But if she's really doing this, I can really scare her. Leave it to me. In the meantime, I think it's time to make an appointment with Joyce and Oksana. Certainly. The sooner the better. I want to see her face when she has to admit that she hid money from her family. Jeff, you will have to remain silent at this meeting. It may be hot, but you can't. I repeat, you can't let your emotions take over. I'll tear Joyce to smithereens, and it won't be a pretty sight. You should just sit and listen without saying a word. Understood? I nodded. I hope I can restrain myself from exploding or punching her. I don't need to explain how this could turn out for you, right? No, no need. But by the end of this meeting, I will bite my tongue on the meat. Pete smiled. Okay, that's enough for today. I'll call you when I make an appointment. Can you leave work during the day? I want it to be uncomfortable for Joyce. Yes, sure. Terry is completely on my side. By the way, did I tell you that I'm currently living in his summer house in Orondo? It's great there. It's half an hour before work, but the place is beautiful, right on the river. The boys will love it. Glad to hear it, Jeff. Much better than an apartment. I wouldn't mind watching it myself. Sue and I are thinking about a summer home up the river. Lake Shellen is becoming too expensive. Let's go there when all this is over. We'll have a victory party there, I said with a wry smile. Yes. Well, remember, there are no winners in divorce. Everyone loses. I nodded, realizing that he was right. Everyone loses. On Wednesday, Pete called and said he was having trouble getting Joyce and Oksana to the negotiating table. He hinted to them that it might be worth taking the case to court. This had an immediate effect. Oksana promised to set an exact date within 24 hours. An hour later, Pete called again. The meeting was scheduled for Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in Oksana's office. Why in her office? I don't think it matters, but it's part of her game. She wants us on her territory, so to speak. It doesn't bother me. We have everything to make the meeting go in our favor. Okay, we'll meet her before 3. Is there anything we need to discuss first? Just to remind you to be calm and silent, he chuckled. Seriously, Jeff, I don't know how this will go, so control yourself at all costs. We're on the side of good, remember? Yes, on the side of good. Thanks, Pete. On Friday at 3:30, I was standing in front of a coffee shop opposite Oksana Dorovich's office. I tried drinking my decaf slowly, but didn't have much success with it. I was useless all morning in the workshop, constantly going over the possible outcomes of the meeting in my head. Will I be able to resist an outburst of anger? I still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that Joyce was hiding money not only from me, but from the whole family. Was it greed? It looks like it. I remembered how we saved for years to afford a vacation, buy a house, save for children's education. Now it all seemed meaningless. I was watching Oksana's office when I saw Joyce approach the entrance. She looked professional, confident, upright, and proud. I wonder if she knew what Pete had in store for her. Of course, Oksana should have already told her that her tax returns were opened. Or was Joyce hiding something even from Oksana, not revealing how little she actually invested in our house? It seemed unlikely, but I would soon find out. I was lost in thought when I felt a light tap on my shoulder and, startled, turned around sharply. It was Pete. Damn it, Pete, don't do that. I almost got hit. Sorry, Jeff. I just saw Joyce. She walked into the office a couple of minutes ago, right? Yes, I saw it too. She looked pretty confident. This surprised me. Maybe it's just a trick. She might have noticed you and decided to pretend that everything was under control. Who knows? We crossed the street and, waiting for the right moment at Pete's signal, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, to the offices of the Wendler Milton Company. With professional precision, we entered their reception area at exactly 3 o'clock. Mr. Mahoney and Mr. Nelson to meet Miss Dorovich, Pete announced. We waited 5 minutes before a strong woman of about 50 with gray hair appeared in the waiting room. Hello, Pete. Nice to see you again. And you must be Jeffrey Nelson, she said, holding out her hand to me. I shook it and nodded, but said nothing. I intended to follow Pete's instructions exactly. He turned to me and grinned, acknowledging my willingness to follow his instructions. We entered a beautifully appointed meeting room with an oval table that could seat 8 to 10 people. Today, there will be only 4 of us. When I entered, I saw that Joyce was already sitting at the table on the near side, but she did not even look up to greet me. It's fine if she wants to act that way. Oksana and Pete exchanged a few pleasantries and then got down to business. I'm sure, Oksana, that you explained to your client that hiding income and assets is wrong, Pete began. Over the past 3 years, Mrs. Nelson has earned more than $230,000, not including the company car. During the same period, she contributed $78,000 to the family's total budget. The question arises, where are the other 150-odd thousand? Mrs. Nelson provided complete tax returns and did not hide any information about her income. Oksana answered carefully. This doesn't answer the question. Where is the rest of her income? Mutual funds, savings bonds, stock market. Mrs. Nelson does not want to disclose this information, Oksana answered with restraint. Did you tell Mrs. Nelson that the court could force her to disclose this information? She informed me, and she does not want to provide this information. In that case, we have no choice but to take the case to court, Pete said in a smooth, controlled voice. What do you want? Joyce suddenly blurted out. I earned this money legally. Paid taxes. I don't owe anyone anything. Her face turned red, but she was not looking at me, but at Pete. From the moment we arrived, she never looked at me. On the contrary, Mrs. Nelson. This money is part of the joint property. They were earned during your marriage while you lived in the same house. I'm sure Miss Dorovich has already explained this to you. No, This is my money. I don't have to share them with anyone. I earned them and will keep them. I was shocked by Joyce's outburst. Her lawyer tried to silence her, but she wouldn't listen. At least now I understood what was on her mind, and I didn't like it at all. Well, Oksana, I think there's no point in continuing this meeting, Pete said. I will file a motion with the court to schedule a formal hearing. It is a pity that you were unable to convince your client that refusing our request would not be beneficial to her. The court will be very critical of her position. Oksana didn't answer, just smiled slightly and nodded. She understood everything, but obviously could not influence Joyce at that moment. As Pete and I stepped out of the elevator and into the June sun, I turned to him. Who is this woman? Pete shook his head and shrugged. I'm proud of you, Jeff. You did not give in to provocation. As for Joyce, I don't know. She looked completely inadequate, and I think Oksana is now just as disappointed and dissatisfied as I would be in her place. What now? Well, I'll file a petition with the court. God knows when the hearing will take place. But once the notice of hearing is sent, Oksana will also receive a copy, and then the real battle will begin. We can cancel the meeting at any time, and I hope that Oksana will be able to talk some sense into Joyce before she completely harms herself. If not, we'll go to court, and then all this will become public knowledge. I doubt that Koch Motors will be delighted with this development. So, if you put a little pressure on Koch and add pressure from Oksana, you can do without a trial. You're good at strategy, Jeff. Yes, that's exactly what I'm counting on. When I got back to the car, I called Matt. Hello, Matt. How are you? Hello, Dad. How was the meeting? Did you know about her? Yes, that's all Mom has been talking about for the last few days. She was worried about something, but didn't say what. I think your mother is getting into trouble, Matt. She doesn't listen to her lawyer, and it will end up in court where she will lose. This could be very bad for her. Damn, Dad, it's bad enough here. Can we come to Orondo for the weekend? We want to get away a little, but Mom is driving us crazy. Certainly. It's a long weekend, so you'll have 3 days of sun and relaxation. Just tell your mom where you're going and come to the store on Friday at 5 p.m. Bring clothes and swimwear. You'll like it. Cool. Thanks, Dad. It will be great to be with you again. If Joyce did not listen to Oksana's advice at the meeting, then she definitely learned one thing: not to contact me directly. I haven't heard anything from her about the boys' trip to Orondo. I was sure that Matt told her, so apparently she gave at least tacit consent to this. Perhaps a weekend alone in this big house would give her something to think about. I told Terry how the meeting went, and he was completely supportive of the idea of bringing the boys to the cottage for the weekend. He couldn't be there himself, but he thought it was important that they get away from the tense situation at home, at least for a little while. We even discussed the possibility that they could stay with me if things got really unbearable at home. Terry didn't mind. I called Pete and asked if it would be possible to arrange permission for the boys to spend the summer with me. He said that he would talk to Oksana, but warned me not to count too much on it. He did not like Joyce's attitude at the meeting and doubted that she would not interfere. He promised to report as soon as he learned something new. In the meantime, he filed a petition with the court to schedule a formal divorce hearing. Looks like we'll have to go to court after all. I didn't hear anything from Joyce or the boys for the rest of the week. However, it was even for the better I was busy helping Yana and Jimmy settle into new jobs. Fortunately, they picked things up on the fly and didn't need much supervision. A little after 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, the boys arrived at the workshop with a couple of sports bags. Is everything okay with your mom this weekend? I asked Matt. Yes. I don't think she's thrilled, but I get the impression she'll be happy to be alone for a bit. It's a pity that it's only for a couple of days. Of course, we can spend time at home when she is at work, but sooner or later we still have to be with her. It feels like we are a burden to her. I still think she has a boyfriend, Ross added. Are there any reasons for this? I asked. No, not really. It's not like she goes out in the evenings or gets strange calls. She's acting weird. Since you left, she has become completely different. Maybe he misses you and doesn't know how to deal with it. Well, at the meeting the other day, she didn't look at me or say a word to me. I just screamed at Pete, my lawyer. I'll tell you about everything over the weekend, but for now, let's get out of here and go to the country. As I already said, you will definitely like it there. They threw their bags in the trunk, and we headed to Orondo, stopping at the local Safeway for groceries along the way. I was pleased that my sons were with me, even if only for 3 days. It was a good way to see if I could handle them throughout the summer. Despite the traffic jams on Friday evening, we got to the dacha by 5 o'clock, unpacked the groceries, after which I showed them the house. I suggested they either share the double bed in my room or one of them sleep on the pull-out sofa on the veranda. They chose the second option, no surprise. I moved into Terry's room myself, taking with me only the clothes I needed for the weekend. When I took out the grill, the boys noticed an aluminum boat with an outboard motor and asked if they could use it. It's possible, but only if I'm with them. I wasn't sure how well they could handle a motorboat like Terry's. On the other hand, I already knew that tomorrow, when the air warms up to more than 20 degrees, they will start seriously looking at girls in bikinis. Matt started grilling steaks, I made a vegetable salad, and Ross microwaved some potatoes. I drank beer, and the boys stuck to soda. So far, I didn't think it was a good idea to relax the rules. Looking around and exploring their surroundings, the boys seemed pleased to have arrived. There was a beach in front of the house, but the water in the river was still too cold for swimming. We had a great weekend, and I almost felt bad that I had to take them home on Monday night. I wondered how successful Pete would be in getting the boys to spend the summer with me, but I didn't tell them anything so they wouldn't be upset if it didn't work out. When I dropped them off at the house, I noticed Joyce looking out the window. I wasn't sure if she was watching them or me. She didn't move or give any sign, so, making sure that the boys had safely entered the house, I simply waved to them and drove back to the dacha. Without their sons, the place began to feel empty again. Until recently, there was movement, laughter, and conversation in the house. I now realized how lonely my life had become without my family. One thought has been haunting me for a week now. Joyce's behavior at the meeting was so uncharacteristic of her that I could not forget it. Even the day before she handed me the divorce papers, she did not show the same coldness that I saw on that ill-fated evening or at the meeting in Oksana Dorovich's office. It seemed as if they were two completely different people. I began to wonder if she was experiencing some kind of nervous breakdown. I had to admit that I was obsessing over this whole situation. Divorce seems inevitable. I was almost sure that the boys would choose to live with me. I was not afraid that a divorce would leave me without a livelihood, as is often the case. But I missed Joyce, or at least the Joyce she once was. I missed her warmth, her smell, the love we shared for so many years. I missed her company just sitting together, watching TV or spending evenings in the backyard. I missed our friends who came to us or who visited us. I've shed a lot of tears over the past 3 weeks. It began to seem to me that I would never be happy again. On Monday morning, I arrived at the workshop at the usual time and found Jonna and Jimmy already waiting for me. "Hello, good morning. Did you have a good long weekend?" I asked them. Jimmy answered in the affirmative, and Jonna nodded and smiled slightly. Well, that's progress for her, I guess. "Were there any problems to talk about?" I asked, looking at both. "No, it's okay," Jimmy replied. "Can we have some more work?" Jonna asked unexpectedly. "Have you already finished what you had?" She nodded. "Yes." "It wasn't very difficult," she said quietly. "And you, Jimmy?" "Well, yes, almost finished. Maybe I need another hour." "Jonna has always been the brains of our class," he chuckled, looking at her. She smiled slightly and looked away shyly. "Okay, I think I'll find something new for you. Maybe it's a little harder this time. Do you have experience with networks? I mean commercials?" They both shook their heads. "Well, you have a chance. Let's sit down and I'll explain how they work and what you need to do to customize and modify them." I received enthusiastic smiles from both and spent the next hour telling them everything I knew about commercial networks and the best ways to set them up. To say these two were smart would be an understatement. They caught it on the fly. Mr. Drummond was right. They will truly become a valuable asset, and I have already begun to think about keeping them with us all year round. It was only their second week in business, but I already knew we had made the right choice. This will significantly reduce the workload for both Terry and me, which means we can look for new clients without worrying about being swamped with work. On Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Pete Mahoney. "Hello, Jeff. Good news. I received consent from Oksana so that the guys could spend the summer with you. I asked her to put the permission in writing, and she sent it to me this afternoon. I'll forward it to you by email." "That's great, Pete. I think the guys will be happy too." "Any news about her assets?" "No. According to Oksana, she did not budge one iota, so the lawsuit remains pending. In civil cases, justice moves slowly, unfortunately." "Okay. I don't think it's that important. There hasn't been any activity in our bank accounts, so it's not draining them. Moreover, she still transfers thousands of dollars as before. Watch this, Jeff. With her attitude, if I were you, I would check the safe deposit box and make sure that everything is in place. You should also consider changing the beneficiary in the insurance and will." "Yes, thank you. I didn't think about that. I'll do it tomorrow." We talked for a couple more minutes and then ended the conversation. I immediately called Matt on his cell phone. "Hi, Matt, it's Dad. Are you home?" "No, I'm at the stadium, watching the game." "What's happened?" "Your mother agreed for you and your brother to spend the summer with me at the dacha. Is it true? I heard her discussing it with that lawyer. I thought she wouldn't agree. When can we go?" "Whenever you want. You need to pack your bags. You will live in the country until you have to leave for Eugene. Well, unless you don't like it there." "Dad, come on," he laughed, as if such a thing were possible. "Just remember that we will have to cook, clean, and do our own laundry. This is teamwork." "Yes. Well, you'll have to get used to it. It will be the same in the hostel." "Is your brother nearby?" "No, he's hanging out with Sandy Pantuzzi. I think she's his new potential girlfriend. I don't know what's wrong with your brother, Matt. He collects girls like some guys collect baseball cards. We'll have to keep an eye on him. Anyway, tell him what we talked about." "Certainly. He will be happy. I'm sure he's already looking forward to ogling girls in bikinis on the beach. They will stand in line to get his attention," he laughed. "Well, at least he'll have some entertainment before he starts studying." "Okay, let me know when you're ready to go and I'll pick you up." "Okay, Dad. Thank you. It's going to be a great summer." I closed the phone and leaned back in my chair. Another problem solved. I began to feel the tension subsiding. In court, our story, apparently, will be sorted out for a long time, so there is no point in sitting and waiting. I was glad that the guys would be with me, especially given Joyce's erratic behavior. And in the workshop, we had excellent young help, which relieved me and Terry. Yes, everything was starting to get better. Then why didn't I feel better? I missed Joyce. Despite everything she said and did these past weeks, I still missed her. 20 years of life together don't just disappear. The loss of her will haunt me for a very long time. Summer in the Wenatchee Valley is predictable, dry, sunny, and hot, and this is quite tolerable when you live in a cozy house on the banks of the Columbia River with the beach right in front of the house. But it's a completely different matter when the workshop does not have proper air conditioning, and due to the constant flow of clients, it becomes unbearably stuffy inside. I didn't hear a single word of complaint from either Yana or Jimmy, although, to be fair, most of the time they were in shorts and t-shirts. By the 4th of July weekend, we were getting used to each other pretty well. Yana became less shy and began to dress more in line with her peers. Jimmy, in addition to his computer talents, also had a great sense of humor. And Terry was just happy that he was no longer being pressured with impossible deadlines. The guys decided to stay at the dacha for the holiday. Well, no wonder. The quantity and quality of lovely girls, there were more than enough to keep them interested. I went to the city to take part in the celebrations and communicate with representatives of local authorities. Our business was famous, and being visible is always good advertising. I was especially interested in the exhibition of vintage cars, and I enjoyed looking at cars from past decades. These were mostly cars from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, either completely restored or modified. It was clear that their owners had invested not only money in them, but also their soul. I stopped at a display with a tractor and a fruit cart. It was a 1930s John Deere, perfectly restored and painted in the signature green and yellow colors. I was so focused on the tractor that I didn't notice anything around me until I heard a familiar voice. "Hello, Mr. Nelson." I turned towards the voice and saw Jonna standing there in a plaid dress, looking like a real farm girl from back in the day. "Hello, Jonna. Is this your tractor?" "Dad. It used to belong to my grandfather, and my dad restored it. He is very proud of him. And he does the right thing. He looks great." The conversation dried up, and then a woman about my age came out from behind the tractor and walked towards us. "You must be the famous Mr. Jeff Nelson," she said, holding out her hand to me. "I'm Jonna's aunt, Jael. I've heard a lot about you," she smiled as I gently shook her hand. "I don't know about the celebrity, but yes, I'm Jeff Nelson," I chuckled. Aunt Giselle was a beautiful woman, elegantly dressed in a light summer outfit. She seemed European to me, perhaps because of her dark skin color or deep brown eyes. "You have changed my niece a lot in a short time," she remarked. I looked at Jonna and she blushed, looking extremely embarrassed. "I need to help my father, Mr. Nelson." "See you next week in the workshop," she said hastily and disappeared in an unknown direction. "And how did I change it?" I asked Giselle. "Well, for starters, you gave her a job that she really likes and makes her feel more confident. In addition, she now works side by side with a young man her own age, and this does wonders for her self-esteem." "Oh, you mean Jimmy Rideout. He's a very smart guy. They worked well together." "Yes. I think Jonna is in love with him, but is too shy to admit it. However, working for you did her good. I see changes, although not much time has passed." "Yes, I noticed that too. This is cool. I think over time she will become a very valuable employee if she overcomes her shyness. And she looks really cute in this throwback dress. I wish she dressed a little more modernly, but I don't dare tell her that." "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," Giselle smiled. Clothing was a kind of protection for her, a way to keep people at a distance. There are reasons for this, but they are not important now. The main thing is that she begins to enjoy life and feel good for the first time in many years. Thank you for helping her with this. Someday I'll tell you how it happened that I hired her. This was not an ordinary decision. "I'd be interested to know," Giselle replied. "Maybe we can have coffee or lunch sometime when you have time." With pleasure, I took out a business card. "Call when it's convenient for you, I'll make time." I found myself smiling and enjoying Giselle presence. She lightly touched my hand, smiled, and disappeared behind the exhibit. It was the first time in a month that I was aware of the presence of an attractive woman and the thoughts she could awaken in me. The holiday fell on a Sunday, so the workshop was closed on Monday, and we had a long weekend. My boys made a couple of new friends in a rondo and sported some pretty impressive tans. Their new friends turned out to be two pretty and very well-mannered local girls. I met them and found out that their parents grow fruit. I assigned Matt to keep an eye on Ross. He was 18, and I wanted him to be responsible for both himself and his brother. I couldn't keep an eye on them when I was at work, so I had to trust that they wouldn't do anything stupid. They never gave me or their mother any reason to worry, but I felt better if Matt was keeping an eye on the youngest. Terry arrived at the cottage the week after the 4th of July, and, after observing Matt's handling of the boat, gave permission to use it without my presence. I wasn't crazy about the idea, but I had a serious talk with the boys and made them promise that they wouldn't do anything that would make Terry or I regret it. It was a matter of trust, and Terry and I were taking a risk by giving them that kind of freedom. I think they understood the seriousness. Typically, midsummer was a quieter period for business, but not this year. Terry and I prepared 2 bids for the school board and a local college, and were delighted when we received the contract for all the college buildings and almost half the school district. This significantly increased the amount of work because the systems had to be ready for the new school year. When Terry and I sat down to figure this out, it became obvious that we were in for a busy period ahead. Jonna and Jimmy would be returning to school soon, and we were already imagining working nights and weekends to keep up with the workload. We needed more staff. Terry, what if we leave Jonna and Jimmy part-time, a couple of hours after school and a little on weekends? This will make our work a little easier. Yes, good idea, Jeff. But even so, this will not be enough. If we do a good job with this project, the school board will give us the rest of the district. We will find ourselves in the same situation again. I don't want to lose these guys, but we need permanent employees. At least one, or better yet, two. Well, then it's time to start searching. But first I will talk to the guys and find out if they are ready to work during school hours. I caught up with Jonna and Jimmy during lunch and sat down at the table with them. You two have done an amazing job for us this summer. I can't tell you how much this helped. Now we have new orders and we will need help all year round. Terry and I were wondering if you would like to work part-time for us during school hours. Of course, Jimmy answered immediately. What are the opening hours? Well, it depends on you. You are studying and need some free time for yourself. What do you think will suit you? I don't know, he answered. I need to think and consult with my parents. I saw Jonna nod. I need to talk to my aunt and dad too. But if it works out, I would really like to continue working here. I smiled at them both. Great. Let me know how you decide. In the meantime, I will start looking for 1 or 2 permanent employees. Business is suddenly growing, and I think it has something to do with you too, I added with a smile. 2 days later, we made a schedule. Students will come to the store after school for 2 hours each day and then work a full day on Saturdays. This will add 18 working hours per week and help us relieve our schedule. Terry and I will take turns opening the store on Saturdays. The more difficult task was to find a permanent employee. I thought about this for a while and again turned to a trusted source. Mr. Drummond, this is Jeff Nelson. I would like to let you know that both Jonna and Jimmy have been a great help to our business. We decided to keep them part-time when they return to school. Glad to hear it, Mr. Nelson. To be honest, I have already spoken to their parents, and they are very pleased with their progress. Sounds like Valley Computer Systems is a great place to work. Good to hear, sir. In fact, I have one more request for you. I'm currently looking for 1 or 2 new full-time employees. I was wondering, with your experience, maybe you know someone who might be a good fit. I'd like to find another Jimmy or Jonna. He laughed. No one has come to mind yet, but give me a little time. I had a lot of capable students, maybe I'll find someone. I have your number, I will call you back. By the way, congratulations on getting your college contract. Your proposal was the best among all, and not just because you are local. Should I assume that you were on the selection committee? I asked. Correct guess. The last thing I want is for someone who doesn't understand the requirements to make a decision. I'm sure we made the right choice. Thank you, sir. We will do everything to justify your trust. When I hung up, I felt satisfied. I had someone in college, and that helped us get a contract. Now all that remained was to justify the trust. The very next day, Mr. Drummond called back. Firstly, we already communicate so much that I think we can move on to names. Call me Lowell. Certainly. My name is Jeffrey, but almost everyone calls me Jeff. Great. Now to the point. I have a question for you. Do you have any prejudices against hiring people with disabilities? To be honest, I haven't thought about it, but I think not. Not at all. It is important that the person can do the job and come to work regularly. What do you mean? Several years ago, I had a very bright student who was accepted into West Point. He received an officer rank and decided to make a military career. 2 years ago, he was injured in a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. Lost both legs. He left the service and returned home, but his life was not going well. Partly it was out of self-pity, partly out of shame that he was no longer the person he used to be. His wife left him, and he started drinking. We, a few people who knew him, decided to help him get back on his feet. We got him out of his drinking spree, and now he's at least ready to start a new life. I think your company could be a great opportunity for him. You will, of course, need to make sure that it is suitable for the job. But as far as I can see, he has changed for the better. The only question is, are you willing to meet him? Wow, this is the story. Look, Lowell, our store is not wheelchair accessible. Could this be a problem? Hardly. He has 2 prosthetics and special crutches. He is quite mobile, but will need a place to sit most of the time. It's not a problem. Have him call me and I'll set up an interview. Great, Jeff. I am grateful to you, and I think it will pleasantly surprise you. His name is Bernie Redmond, but most people call him Red. When you see him, you will immediately understand why. Thanks again. If I think of anyone else who might be a good fit for you, I'll let you know. Thank you, Lowell. I hope Mr. Redmond will come along. I would like to help a veteran, especially a disabled one. This could not be easy. What if he can't do the job? I would have to refuse him, and I would feel terrible. What if he starts drinking again? Then I will have to fire him, and this will cause additional problems. I need to talk to Terry. I understand your doubts, Jeff. A former addict and also disabled. His wife left him a blow to his pride. But you know, you're pretty good at reading people. Better than me, for sure. I think this is exactly the case when you should rely on intuition. Mistakes, of course, are possible. But if everything works out, you'll get a good worker, and I'll be able to stay home on Saturdays, he chuckled. It was Terry's way of saying that he trusted my decision, and if something went wrong, he wouldn't remind me of it. The next day, at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Redmond called me. Mr. Nelson, my name is Bernard Redmond. I heard that you have an opening for a computer technology specialist. I would like to apply for this position. His voice was clear, without an accent, confident. Very military, in my opinion. Yes, Mr. Redmond. I was waiting for your call. I think we should meet to discuss the job and its conditions. At your convenience, I can be at your disposal at any time, sir. Is this afternoon okay? No, it will do. Will 3 hours be enough? Yes, sir. 15 sir. I'll be there. I smiled when I heard him indicate the time. He seemed enthusiastic and eager to impress. This day promised to be interesting. At exactly 3 o'clock, the front door opened, and a tall, red-haired man entered the room on crutches, carefully closing the door behind him. He was handsome, with a clean-shaven, square jaw, wearing light brown trousers, a polo shirt, and a baseball cap with a military emblem. He took off his hat and, leaning on crutches, headed to my office. I went out to meet him. Hello, you must be Bernard. I'm Jeff Nelson, I said, extending my hand without thinking. Bernard shook it confidently. Nice to meet you, Mr. Nelson. Bernard, everything is quite informal here. Call me Jeff, and I'll call you Bernard, unless, of course, you prefer Red, I smiled. My friends call me Red. Then let it be Red. He visibly relaxed as we got down to formalities. Under one arm he had a folder, which he handed to me. I opened it. It was a resume, and quite a voluminous one at that. I put it aside and looked at it. Direct, clear gaze, neat appearance. Quite consistent with what you expect from a military man. Or rather, a former military man. He looked in good shape and walked quite confidently on prosthetics and crutches. It seemed like there would be no problem with this. How did you get there? I asked. I'm driving. I have a van equipped with manual controls. I have a special driver's license that allows me to drive in any state. The conversation started well. I asked him about his background, both in the military and working with computers. He received a good education not only from the local college, but also from the military. He didn't go into detail, but I realized that I was involved in special operations that required computer skills. He mentioned that he worked with codes and intercepted transmissions from the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, but did not explain what exactly he or his team was doing. Over the next 30 minutes, I told him what our company does and who we work for. Some functionality was quite routine, and some tasks were quite complex. I mentioned that in the future I would like to expand our capabilities to include programmable logic controllers and safety systems. Hearing this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and widened his eyes. I told him about the salary and work schedule, and he was satisfied it met his expectations. Now he lives with his brother, but would like to have his own place. It didn't take me long to realize that he had what it took to do the job. Moreover, I liked him. A good guy who went through a couple of terrible events. I could understand his anger at his wife, who left him after learning about the loss of his legs. She almost took his manhood with her. He admitted that he was drinking at the time and had some bad days, but managed to stop it. He knew that he only managed it thanks to his friends. Friends like Lowell Drummond and his brother David. Now he put it behind him and looked to the future with confidence. All he needs is a job that will restore his self-esteem and give him perspective. If Terry approves, we'll give him that chance. Terry, I'd like to introduce you to Red Redmond, our new employee. Red, this is Terry Jackson, the owner of the company and a good friend of mine. Pleased to meet you, sir. Just Terry, Red. It's all informal here, as Jeff probably already said. Welcome. I heard that you served our country. I want to personally thank you for this. They shook hands, and a few minutes later, Bernard Red Redmond walked out the door. He'll be back tomorrow morning to start work. Are you sure about him? Terry asked as we watched him get into his van and drive away. Yes, I think we have found another excellent specialist, I replied. I looked up at the clock. It was already past 5. I spent 2 hours with Red Redmond, and the time flew by. I felt pleasantly elated as I closed the office and headed to the car to drive to Orondo. Upon arrival at the cottage, a cold glass of beer and a meeting with the guys awaited me. After dinner, I called Lowell Drummond and told him we had hired Red. I thanked him for the recommendation and said that if he still has such people, let him send them to us. Our cooperation was going well. I had almost forgotten about Jael until she walked into the office on Friday morning. Waving to Yana, she headed towards me. Have you forgotten that we were going to have coffee one morning? She asked directly, but with a smile. No, but I thought you would call yourself. It doesn't matter, though. Is now the right time? Certainly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come. I turned around and said deeper into the office. Terry, I won't be long. Okay, Jeff. I led Jael to the exit and we left. Before the door closed, I noticed Terry and Jonna standing at the doorway, watching us. Yana had a warm smile on her face. It's good to see you again, Jael. How are you? I asked as we headed to the cafe on the corner. It's okay, Jeff. I don't need to ask how you are doing. I heard that you have 2 new contracts, hired my niece part-time, and found a new full-time employee. This is success. Congratulations. Thank you. But how did Yana's parents react to this? Well, I convinced her father that this was a great opportunity for her, and he agreed. Her mother died a long time ago, and I have been replacing her mother since then. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that. It must have been very difficult for her. It's very difficult. She was only 7 when it happened. She withdrew into herself and became quite distant. Paul, her father, my brother, he didn't know how to deal with it, so I came here to help him. I'm afraid I wasn't the solution for her. She didn't know me very well, so I could hardly replace her mother. However, over time, especially since you showed up, everything has changed for the better. I think you give me too much credit. Jimmy probably played a bigger role in this than I did. Yes, she laughed. This is also possible, but be that as it may, I see that she has changed a lot this summer. She comes out of her shell and begins to enjoy life. She even began to dress a little better. I hope you noticed. Yes, I noticed. But he didn't dare say anything. Maybe I should compliment her. What do you think? I think if you do that, she'll just faint. She laughed again. She had a wonderful laugh, and her eyes sparkled when she laughed. This was one of the things that made Jael a very attractive woman. Fainting? Do girls still do that? Certainly. It may be an old-fashioned word, but it's not an old-fashioned reaction. Apparently, Jimmy had already noticed the change and told her she looked good. It won't hurt if the boss notices. I promise I will notice. You mentioned that you came here to help with Yana. Where are you from? From a place that is about as far from here as you can get. Northern Maine, very close to the Canadian border. Our family is Acadian and originally lived in Nova Scotia until the British kicked us out. Over time, many moved to Louisiana, but our family moved to Vermont and then Maine. Paul came here because he wanted to grow apples and the soil in Maine was poor. He's settled in very well. And you? I came here after a failed romance. I needed a place to hide, and my sister-in-law had just died of cancer. I felt that I was needed here, and that's why I came. I have never regretted it. This is a wonderful place. Agree. I've lived here all my life. I don't think I'll ever want to leave. We were talking, and before I knew it, half an hour had passed. It's time for me to go back to the store. I'd love to do this again someday, Jael. I enjoyed our conversation. I would like that too. If we don't hear from each other for a couple of weeks, one of us should call, she said. Well, with the way my life is going now, I don't know 2 weeks from 2 months, so maybe you should just do what you did today, just show up. If it's not an emergency, I'll drop everything and join you. She gave me her wonderful smile again and nodded. Okay, then it's on me. We parted on the sidewalk in front of the store, and I walked inside with a smile on my face. Jonna and Jimmy watched me as I walked by, and I swear I heard a girl giggle. Giselle was right, Yana was coming out of her shell. By the end of July, I still hadn't heard from Pete, so I called him. Any news from Joyce's lawyer or from the court? No, nothing yet. I've been looking at the docket, and I think our day in court will be set for early September. In the summer, it is always difficult to submit documents. What are you planning to do when September comes? I have spoken to Terry and will remain at the cottage until the divorce is finalized. I would like to make an arrangement with Joyce for Ross to stay with me, and I would take him to school and pick him up in the evenings. I don't know if she will go for it. The kids will be with me for 3 months, so she probably already misses them. I will miss you. Matt leaves for college the last week of August. He needs to be there for orientation and also take care of his dorm, books, and other things. I'm thinking of buying him a car. Haven't told him anything yet, but when I take him to Eugene, maybe I'll stop by Portland and buy it there. There's no sales tax, so you might save some money. This will be a big change for you, Jeff. Matt will leave, Joyce will too, you will live alone. Maybe with Ross, maybe not. Do you think you can handle it? I don't know, Pete. I think so, but I think I'll find out soon. I'll be in touch, buddy. As soon as something becomes clear, I'll let you know immediately. August turned out to be one of the hottest on record. Farmers worried about sunburn on fruits and labor shortages for harvesting. My parents provided for all of this. It was a family affair, and we worked early mornings and late evenings to avoid the heat of the day. Warehouses remained open late into the night to quickly cool the harvested fruit and maintain its freshness. Terry knew my schedule, and we accommodated each other in the store. In total, I was busy collecting for a week or 10 days, but not every day. I understood that as my parents aged, sooner or later they would have to hire workers. They put off this moment for as long as they could, wanting everything to stay in the family. It wasn't just about harvesting, but also about pruning, weed control, spraying, pollination, and all the other details that go into managing a garden. Giselle came to see me for coffee several times, and we resumed our conversations. I learned more and more about Yana and her father, but we both noticed how the girl was changing. Whatever the reason, she began to dress much more attractively, became more relaxed in her interactions, and generally smiled a lot more. She loved her job and told me so regularly. She and Jimmy made a great team, helping each other solve problems. I've wondered more than once if there was something more going on between them. Pete called just before I was scheduled to leave for Eugene with Matt. Hey, Pete, what's wrong? Have you finally heard from Joyce? Um, Not really. I don't know how to tell you this, but Joyce has disappeared. What? What do you mean disappeared? That's what it means. She's missing. She didn't go to work this week. Someone from Cock called her parents, and they called Oksana. They apparently checked the house, but there was no sign of Joyce, and some of her clothing and personal belongings, as well as her SUV, were gone with her. Don't you think she just went on vacation and forgot to tell someone? Jeff, does this sound like Joyce? No, no, you're right. So, what's next? Well, they say that Cock is currently undergoing an audit, and perhaps Joyce is somehow involved in this, but no one is saying anything. What do you mean involved? There appear to be irregularities in some of the bills, but I don't know anything for sure yet. Hell, no, she couldn't. Or could she? You knew her better than I did, Jeff. Could she? I'm not sure I even know her anymore, Pete. Over the past 4 months, it was as if she had turned into a different person. Oh, brother, this will be a blow for the guys. Divorce is one thing, but theft, I think until I know for sure, or until they tell us something, I won't talk about it. They have enough problems as it is. Yes, I have a couple of friends in the police force, so if anything comes to light, you'll be the first to know. It's better if guys hear it from you than read it in the newspaper or see it on TV. Yes, thanks, Peter. God, what else? This is already turning into some kind of damn series, pardon the expression. It's okay, I understand. You're holding up very well considering the pressure you're under. Just wait until I have more details. I hardly slept that night. I was trying to figure out what my wife was thinking if she actually did what Pete was hinting at. The more I thought about the money she was hiding from me. Was she creating a financial cushion for herself to escape? What the hell could have turned her mind around so much that she decided to do something like that? As usual, I had too many questions and too few answers. We got up early the next morning. Matt and I were leaving for Eugene, and since my parents were busy harvesting, Joyce's parents had to look after Ross until I returned. I didn't have time to talk much with Nora and Mike, but I knew that they were very worried about Joyce, and that was without any rumors about possible shenanigans at Cock Motors. I told them we would talk when I returned in 3 days. The drive to Portland at this time of year took 5.5 hours. Through Blewett Pass, then Ellensburg, Yakima, then west along the Columbia to Portland. I decided to stop there for the night, explaining to Matt that I wanted to buy him a car to get around the city while studying, and in a big city there are more choices. As soon as he recovered from the shock, he immediately agreed. It took half a day to find the car. We ended up going with a mid-size crew cab pickup with a V6 and all-wheel drive. It appeared to have been used only in town, had less than 40,000 miles on it, and showed no signs of rough use. We bought it from the same dealer who originally sold it, so I had more confidence that it wasn't junk. Several years ago, I agreed with the bank to open a line of credit, which I used while working in the family garden. At that time, it was practically unused, so contributing almost $11,000 was not a problem. After getting the insurance and plates, I gave Matt a check for $2,500 for other expenses, warning him that this money should last until the new year. It seemed to me that he was so stunned that I bought him a car that he would agree to any conditions. Of course, he drove to Eugene in a pickup truck, and I followed him in my car. 2 years ago, I bought a Subaru Outback. I wanted all-wheel drive for winter trips up the hills to the house. Snow was common in the winter, and with winter tires, it turned out to be a great investment. Matt was a responsible guy, and I was confident that he would handle the car with care and not do anything stupid. The drive back to Wenatchee took me all day. I was a little over the speed limit and got there in just under 7 hours, even with a couple of stops. Along the way, I wondered if I should return to our house. If Joyce did run away, that would change everything in the divorce, especially if she committed a crime. I may not have to part with our beautiful house on the hill. But I soon began to scold myself for such selfish thoughts. because I was thinking about how her disappearance could help me. I was ashamed, but something told me that the bad news was just beginning, and another emotional shock awaited me ahead. My thoughts were running in all directions again. Ross started his last year at school. The first week, he drove there with me from Orondo in the mornings and returned home late at night. At the end of the week, we packed up and moved back into our house. In the third week of September, Pete Mahoney called me and asked me to come to his office. I, of course, agreed, but with horror I foresaw what would be discussed. "Come in, Jeff. Meet me in the conference room. I have a guest you need to talk to." I entered the meeting room and saw a middle-aged man in a dark blue suit, white shirt, and dark tie sitting at the table. When we entered, he stood up. "Jeff, this is Agent Sam Hildebrand from the Seattle FBI office. He has news about Joyce." I was stunned when I shook the agent's hand. "Sit down and relax, Jeff. I think Mr. Hildebrand will help clear up many of the mysteries surrounding Joyce's actions. Mr. Nelson, I understand that you are in the process of divorcing your wife, Joyce Alana Nelson, née Fielding, right?" "No, not really. She was the one who filed for divorce." "Yes, that's right. My mistake. In short, we are investigating your wife's embezzlement from Koch Motors and Koch Credit Services. We were notified of the theft by Wenatchee police, who were called to Koch Motors after a preliminary audit revealed a shortage. We subsequently determined that your wife had left the area and probably the country. She travels under the name Alana Fielding and has a passport and other documents in that name. Her company car was found in the parking lot of SeaTac Airport. She left him there on August 20th at 9 o'clock 7 minutes in the evening. We know she boarded a flight to Mexico City and then presumably boarded another flight to South America, possibly Brazil. We haven't been able to confirm this yet, but it's highly likely that's where she headed. The further location is still unknown to us." I was shocked. I couldn't wrap my head around what he was telling me. Joyce became a fugitive and left the country to avoid prosecution. It all seemed too incredible to be true. "Are you sure?" I finally asked. "Yes, absolutely. A warrant has already been issued for her arrest, and all our international contacts have been alerted. A company audit confirmed a shortfall of at least $500,000, most of which had disappeared within the last year. We have not yet been able to trace the money, but we suspect it is in an offshore account, possibly in the Cayman Islands." I can't believe it. This is simply impossible. This is so unlike her. All this, the scam, the money, her running away, it just doesn't make any sense, I said, shaking my head. "Believe me, Mr. Nelson, we encounter such cases more often than you think. The temptation can be too great. In any case, if you suddenly hear from your wife, please contact me immediately. Please don't try to solve this yourself. Now it's a matter for the FBI." I nodded, still unable to comprehend my wife's action. The agent stood up, shook hands with Pete and me, and then left the office. "This is getting crazier and crazier, Pete. What does this all mean? What will happen now? Regarding the divorce, her application will be annulled if she does not appear. This means that there will be no divorce unless you file for it yourself. I need to clarify how much time must pass without her answer before the application is invalidated, but I think about 6 months. Sometime by spring, you will be a free man again. I wonder if I'll ever be free again, Pete. When the media finds out about this, I fear for our sons and Joyce's parents. They don't know about the theft yet, do they? They already know, Jeff. Hildebrand met with them this morning. He was checking to see if she had contacted them. This revealed the whole situation, and he had to tell them the whole sad story. I think you should call the Fieldings and see how they are. Yes, sure. I need to call my parents too. Do you know if the FBI talked to them? As far as I know, no. I think I'll need a stiff drink before I start this talk. I was right. Nora and Mike were heartbroken. Their daughter was wanted by the FBI and other agencies for embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was just as hard for them to believe as it was for me. As I sat in their living room and watched their world fall apart, I knew I felt the same way. My parents, too, were shocked that they had been so wrong about a man they loved and respected. The divorce changed their relationship with Joyce, but even in their wildest fantasies, they could not imagine that something like this would happen. I talked to Ross and explained to him what was happening with his mother. He was shocked and upset. "But Dad, she can't just run away. What about us? She's our mother. There must be some mistake here," he exclaimed, as tears rolled down his face. "I hope you're right, son. I really hope so. But for now, we can only wait." He nodded, not looking at me, but realizing that we had no choice. There was still Matt, who needed to tell everything. Matt's reaction surprised me. He was angry, angry at her. How could she do this to us? When he calmed down a little, I told him that we were moving back into the house, which made him happy. Even though he wouldn't be there until Christmas break, it was still his home, and it gave him a sense of stability. I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. Joyce left. Matt was at college, Ross was at school all day, and often went out with friends on the weekends. I felt incredibly lonely and felt the loss of my wife more than ever. I accepted that Joyce would never come back. She disappeared forever, either on the run or when she was caught in prison. The only relief for me was working in the workshop. Terry, Red, Jonna, and Jimmy were my salvation. I could talk to them, work with them, just be around them. It helped, but did not save. "Hello, Jael. This is Jeff Nelson. How are you?" "Hello, Jeff. Fine. I'm sorry to hear about your wife. It must be very difficult." "Yes, but I can't do anything about it. Meanwhile, I thought it was time for me to call you myself. Would you like to have dinner with me on Friday night? There are several excellent restaurants in the city." "Oh, that's very nice, Jeff. Yes, I would love to have dinner with you." "Great. Do you have a preference?" "I eat almost everything," I assured her. "Well, I'm the only one in the family who likes Mexican food, so if it suits you, let's choose something like that." "Great. I know just one suitable place. Should I pick you up at 6:30? Is it too early?" "No, 6:30 is just right. Do you know how to find our house?" "You live not far from my house, if I remember correctly from Yana's profile. On Canyon Drive." "Exactly. See you at 6:30. When I hung up the phone, I felt good for the first time that day. Jael was a person you could talk to without fear of giving away someone's secret. Our irregular coffee meetings had become something of an addiction, and I wanted them to continue. The idea of inviting her to dinner had been in my head for a long time, and in my depressed mood, I decided to take a chance. Her agreement immediately lifted my spirits. "Ross and I have moved back into our house," I told Jael. "Hopefully, this will give us both some stability. I'm especially worried about him. It's very hard for him because of everything that happened to his mother. I understand you perfectly. Sometimes the unknown is worse than the truth itself. Do you think it would be helpful if I kept in touch with you and him? I'm just 5 minutes from your house." "It would definitely help me," I smiled, "but I don't know how Ross will react. But we can try." "Great. I'll give you a little time to settle in, and then, as if by chance, I'll drop by for a visit. Perhaps I'll bring Yana with me. This might help." "Yes, maybe. Good idea," I agreed. I admired my companion while we waited for dessert. She was a person with positive energy, and her presence made me feel better despite the chaos my life had become. I started to think about her as a possible girlfriend, and maybe even more. Then he pulled himself together, feeling ashamed for thinking so quickly about replacing Joyce. "Watching you is like watching clouds, Jeff. All your thoughts are reflected on your face. First joy, then sadness. Is everything exactly like that?" I nodded, surprised by her insight. "Yes, that's right. Now I'm completely confused. I don't know what to think about Joyce, about my marriage, about my future. Everything is up in the air, and I have no idea how everything will turn out. I can't do anything about it. I can only wait and see what happens next." I sighed and continued. "One part of me wants to get to know you better, but the other says it's too soon, maybe even wrong. Sorry if I'm being too blunt, but you're a very attractive woman, and I'm still married. She smiled while I confessed my attraction and confusion. Well, everything is very clear here. You are interested in me, and I am interested in you too. I think sooner or later you will become a free man again, and I just want to make sure that my name is on the list of potential candidates. I looked at her in surprise. Wow, no hints, no subterfuge, straight to the point. This required an answer. Right in the first place, I said without thinking. But it was true. If I were ever single, Jael would be the first person I would want to ask out. That's great, she smiled widely. I achieved what I wanted, and I didn't even have to extract a confession from you. Yes, Jael. I hope you don't think I'm too approachable, I told her. Of course not. We're just having a nice time, two adults who enjoy each other's company, and we'll think about serious things later. How much later? Take your time, Jeff. We are just at the very beginning. I have a feeling that when the time comes, we will both understand this. Our conversation was light at first glance, but there was clearly a hidden meaning in it. I was surprised at how easily I got into this situation. I understood that I needed to control myself so as not to throw myself into something that I would later regret. Your clouds again, she said. Do you doubt it? No, I'm just reminding myself not to rush. Why is it so easy to talk to you? You literally force me to voice my thoughts. It's impossible to hide anything from you. Great, I'm just glad. And besides, it seems to me that you are not one of those who keep secrets from those whom they trust. Does this mean I trust you? Perhaps yes. We ate Black Forest for two, having fun making fun of each other. I really enjoyed this easy competition, and of course, her company itself. And apparently, Jael felt the same way. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to be close to her. I went more than 5 months without female attention, longer than I had since my freshman year of college. Whether I was married or not, I was attracted to this woman, and my big mind was already transmitting this signal to my little one. In the novel Great Expectations, Dickens's main character dreamed of breaking out of poverty and becoming a gentleman. My great hopes were to get out of the ruins of my marriage and build a new life with another woman. And this beautiful lady in front of me was definitely a worthy candidate. And those clouds again, Jeff, she laughed quietly. Again? She nodded. I advise you not to get involved in poker. When you have a good thought, your eyes immediately give you away. Am I that transparent? She smiled with slight irony. Then guess what I'm thinking about now. About how you would like to have me in your arms, if not in bed. I don't know what expression came across my face, but it was enough to provoke a reaction from her. Oh my God, right on point, she muttered, clearly embarrassed. She quickly took a sip of water to calm down. Well, this is your game, remember? I was reminded. Touché, sir, she muttered, coming to her senses, but blushing deeply. I decided to up the ante. So, what is needed for this? Let's just say you're moving in the right direction. Fine, that's enough for me. After all, I am a married man. I need to take care of my reputation. Oh, so I don't need it, she said, feigning indignation. A true gentleman would never jeopardize a lady's reputation. That's not how it's done, I said in the best British accent I could muster. Well, I don't know how true that is, but I think it's time to go. I really enjoyed this evening. A great start to something bigger, don't you think? I finished my coffee and took the check. Great start, I replied seriously. As Thanksgiving approached, I felt torn between thoughts of Jael and Joyce. Jael was a desirable woman who openly admitted her interest in me. However, I was still married to Joyce. It may have only been a formality, but I nonetheless felt a sense of commitment to my wedding vows. Until our divorce was finalized, I remained a married man and intended to behave as such. Pete officially filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. If there was any precise definition of what destroyed our marriage, it was this. The divorce was expected to be finalized in 6 months, as we did not expect any opposition to the petition. I felt bad when I signed the papers, but I knew it was inevitable and I needed to move on. At least thanks to Jael, the future didn't seem as bleak as it could have been. I was glad that my parents offered to host Thanksgiving dinner and invited Nora and Mike Fielding as well. Our families were already on friendly terms, but I considered this gesture on the part of my parents especially warm. Matt couldn't make it out for the long weekend, but he sent his best wishes and said everything was going well for him. The most difficult thing for him was living away from home, but he was not alone, and judging by his voice, he had to cope. I was wondering what to do for Christmas. Matt would come, but I didn't know what to do with the Fieldings. I thought about inviting them, but I was worried that they might feel uncomfortable. In the end, I decided to invite them to Christmas Eve and my parents to Christmas Day itself. I also got an idea for a workshop. Terry, this time last year, it was just you and me working in the workshop. Now we have Jonna, Jimmy, and Red. I would like to propose holding our first Christmas corporate party. Christmas Eve is on a Friday, so we could have lunch and close early. What do you say? Certainly. Sounds like a great idea. Just let's skip the turkey, okay? Agree. You can order Chinese food, or Mexican, or something else unusual. Let's have a vote. Let them choose what they want. I agreed. I went to the front of the workshop and gathered 3 of our young employees. We decided to have a Christmas corporate party in the workshop and want to choose what to order for lunch. It could be sandwiches, Chinese food, Mexican food, or something else. Everyone has a voice, so speak up. I'm for the Chinese, Jimmy said immediately. I like this idea too. Red immediately supported him. It suits me, Jonna agreed. Well, we already have the majority, and Terry and I don't mind, so Chinese cuisine. I reported to Terry, and he was pleased. I'll leave the menu to you, Jeff. Just order more. Why don't you invite that guy from college? He really helped us find those 3 guys. Damn, good idea, Terry. I'll call you now. I called Lowell Drummond. He had things to do that day, but said he would be happy to stop by for lunch. When he learned that there would be Chinese cuisine, he was not at all upset. There were more than 2 weeks left before the party, so there was plenty of time to prepare. The workshop will be a little cramped, but by rearranging tables and workstations we can manage. The following Monday, we had a visitor. She was an attractive blonde with a dark tan and a slender figure. Dressed in a military-style cotton blouse and light trousers, she looked quite impressive. She looked to be about 30. Having looked around the room, she immediately headed towards me. Hello, I'm Ann Shymansky. I'm looking for Red Redmond. Is he here? No, he's on call at the school office. Should be back soon. Oh, won't it be a problem if I wait? Of course not. But besides coffee, there's nothing special to offer. It's not worth it. I already understand what you are doing here. Red and I served together in Afghanistan. Both were technicians and worked together from time to time. So you were there when he was wounded? Yes. I had just signed a contract for 2 more years when this happened. I almost threw up when I found out. I had just finished my service and decided to look for him. I've heard some rumors. Are you from these places? From Ellensburg. I returned home a week ago. I decided to pop in and see how he was. I think he will be happy. As far as I understand, he is more of a loner. Is it true? When we served, he was married. She left him when she found out he had lost his legs. He had a tough time back then, but he's fine now. For our team, he is simply a godsend. Oh, damn, that's tough, she said, thinking for a few seconds. You said he's on call now, so he's moving. Yes, artificial legs and special crutches, but he has a van and gets along well with clients. Now he works in the field for us. A wide smile appeared on her face. Damn, that's great to hear. I can't wait to see him. We spent a lot of time together. He's a great guy, she enthused. I sensed that there was more than just admiration behind her words. I was curious what would happen when Red returned. We didn't have to wait long. She saw him when he parked the van at the entrance to the workshop. The red hair was hard to miss. She stood in the middle of the hall, placing her hands on her hips and spreading her legs wide. From behind, she resembled a soldier in formation. When Red walked through the door, he didn't notice her right away. "Do you always come to work so late, soldier?" she said in the most commanding tone. His head snapped up and his face showed complete surprise. "Annie, is it you?" He began to clumsily rush towards her. She quickly moved towards him and embraced him. I saw tears in their eyes and realized that I should return to my office and leave them alone. There was more between them than just service comradeship. I was working on a proposal for the police to modernize their communications with on-board computers in all patrol cars. We would supply equipment and service, providing them with the best system on the market. Their budget was being approved early next year, and I wanted our proposal to be included in their proposal. This would be a very profitable contract for us. I was wondering what else I could add to make the offer more attractive when there was a soft knock on the door. It was Red and Anne, standing together and looking happy. "Jeff, you already know Anne, but I just wanted to say that she is the best computer analyst I have ever met. If you hear about work for her, we would be very grateful," Red said. "Anne, are you working now?" I asked. "No, sir. I live with my parents in Ellensburg. I'm looking for a job similar to Red's. I would like to use my skills." "What do you know about PLC?" I asked. "Quite a lot. I did on-site repairs and restoration. It was what is called a hostile environment." "What about moisture and cold?" "Same problems. Only instead of sand, there is water. Instead of 120 degrees of heat frost. I will think. We may need another person early next year. We have a lot of work now, but I would like there to be even more. If there is a vacancy, it will be in January. Can you wait?" "Yes, sir. Especially if I work with Red. He's the best, sir. And it took me a while to get Red to stop calling me sir, so if you don't mind, call me Jeff." She smiled. "Of course, Jeff." "So you think this girl can handle it?" Terry asked. "Yes, I'm almost sure. She and Red are longtime friends, and she also has the right skills. And she says that she is a professional in PLC, and this just fits into our plans to expand work with packaging plants. Well, this is a risk, because we don't have this business yet. But if you think so, I'm ready to take the risk. You are rarely wrong. So, if you want to hire her for January, go ahead. Do you understand that this will increase the number of employees to 6? Yes, I know. This damn business is getting too big for me. Why are you doing this to me, Jeff?" He grinned. I just couldn't resist. I chuckled. "On the other hand, how do our sales look this year compared to last year?" He looked at me with his usual narrowed eyes and then chuckled. "More than twice as high. We might not make as much profit this year, but next year, damn, I can't imagine how much we could make." "So you're happy with what we're doing?" He nodded. "Yes, I'm happy. It feels like we were just waiting for something to happen, and then it did. We can handle this, Jeff. Everything will be fine." A week before Christmas, I met with Anne Schmansky for an hour and told her that she would be starting work on January 3rd. She was delighted and couldn't wait to tell Red. I was glad too. I could now confidently work with packaging plants, cold storage warehouses, and various manufacturing plants to provide PLC maintenance and repair services. This would complement our growing range of services. 2 days before Christmas, Sam Hildebrand called me. This call turned my holiday into something I would rather forget. "Mr. Nelson, I'm calling to inform you that your wife has been arrested in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and will be extradited to the United States. She will be held in Seattle pending her arraignment and trial. I will try to keep you updated with dates and times as they become known to me." "Thank you, Mr. Hildebrand," I replied weakly. I hung up the phone in some kind of trance, not knowing what would happen next. I sat in my office for an indeterminate amount of time until Terry stopped by to see if I was there. "What happened, Jeff? You look like you've seen a ghost." "No, not a ghost. The FBI just called Joyce was arrested in Brazil and will be extradited to Seattle." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Jeff. It must hurt. Now, Terry, I'm just speechless. It all feels like some weird movie I found myself in. I don't control what happens or who it happens to. I'm just a spectator. I almost regret that she was caught. Then at least she wouldn't drive me crazy. Yes, I understand. What a present for Christmas. This is not a gift, but a real lump of coal from Santa if he is angry. He laughed quietly at my joke and returned to his office. I called Pete with the latest news. He promised to keep an eye on the Seattle court schedule to see when the arraignment will take place. He did not advise me to attend, but wanted to know what her answer would be and who her lawyer would be. He kept me informed. For the first time in my memory, Christmas was gloomy. I missed Joyce, as did her parents and our sons. We tried to make the holiday joyful, but the shadow of what happened hung over us. I felt sorry for Matt. He returned home for the first time since he left for Eugene, but there was no joy at home. His studies were going well, but his mother's arrest hung over him, like all of us. I worked from Tuesday to Saturday, sometimes popping into the office on Monday if I needed to complete some work on time. It didn't really matter to me at that moment. I was alone at home. Matt had left and Ross was at school. I began to sometimes go to Jael and her brother Paul just to chat and drink a cup of coffee. Paul was an interesting person. He was a large man, probably 6 feet 4 inches tall, and weighing at least 250 pounds. But almost immediately it became clear that he was a gentle giant. Blonde curly hair, bright blue eyes, and a constant smile made him a very attractive person. 15 years ago, he bought a small apple orchard and gradually replaced all the old red delicious trees with more valuable specialty varieties. Most of them were not intended for fresh consumption, but were used in the production of cider, some wines, and liqueurs. The soil and climate on the hill were ideal for these varieties, and much of the crop was sold out of state. These apples were practically independent of price fluctuations in the edible fruit market and provided Paul with a stable and solid income. He was Giselle's older brother and was quite friendly towards me. He knew that Giselle and I were friends and met sometimes. Paul was a widower whose wife had contracted spinal meningitis many years earlier in Maine. Giselle secretly told me that he has a close friend who lives not far from their garden, but they do not plan to get married. They were, in her words, friends with benefits. It took me a while to realize how comfortable I was with Jael. We just got along great, and I felt at ease with her. One moment I thought of her as a friend, and the next I already imagined her as a lover. I didn't have to guess what she was thinking. She made it clear that she expected a long-term relationship, but she was patient. As she often said, "I've waited so long for the right man, I can wait a little longer." But I think there comes a time for everyone when they want something, and they want it right now. "Do you think it's time for us to get closer?" she said one evening after dinner at an Italian restaurant where we often went. She leaned her elbows on the table, resting her head in her hands. Her eyes sparkled mischievously, and her smile was conspiratorial. I was collected enough at that moment to immediately understand what she meant. But how I was going to answer, I didn't know that yet. "You are very patient with me, Giselle," I said, trying to gain time. "I kept waiting for my divorce to be finalized. But, to be honest, it's just an excuse." "Well, we sorted it out. Now take me home. Paul is off to British Columbia to sell apples, and Jonna is hanging out with Jimmy. We have a couple of hours at our disposal," she smiled. "The bill, please," I said to a passing waitress. Jael was right. I was just stalling for time. I knew I was falling in love with her, so what was I waiting for? When we entered her house, she immediately took me to the bedroom and closed the door. "Take off your clothes," she ordered softly. "You or me. Choose yourself." When it was all over, we lay in an embrace, completely satisfied and happy. I was definitely happy, and now I didn't understand why I had put it off for so long. We were made for each other, I had no doubt about that. I looked at the clock by the bed. It was almost 11. "I guess I should go," I said hesitantly. "I wish you would stay," she muttered. "I want to wake up next to you in the morning. I'm falling in love with you, you know." This is a serious step, Giselle. Love is not something to be taken lightly. There's nothing frivolous about my feelings for you, Jeff. You are the man I have been looking for all my adult life. You know who you are. You are a wonderful person, A wonderful father. You see the good in people. Today, you loved me exactly the way I always dreamed. You survived a terrible time, maintaining the inner strength that I see in you every day. What more could a woman want? I don't know how to cook at all, I joked. Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm not that bad at cooking. And you're even better in bed. You showed yourself in the best light, too. And then I heard some sound. It was as if a door had slammed. What is this? I stood up sharply. Relax. This is Yana. She won't bother us. I leaned back on the pillow, blushing at the thought of being caught in bed with my co-worker's aunt. Footsteps came up the stairs, and as they passed the door, I heard, "Good night, Aunt Giselle." "Good night, Jeff." "Oh, fuck," I moaned. "Relax, darling. Did you forget that your car is parked at the house?" "Yes. Looks like I forgot. How the hell am I going to be able to look her in the eye in the workshop now?" "Jeff, she's a grown woman, and she's in a relationship too." "Seriously?" "Of course. Did you think he and Jimmy were playing cards?" "I had no idea. I mean, she's changed so much in the last year, but I never imagined." She laughed quietly. "So, since we've been found out, will you stay the night?" "I'd love to, but Ross will be alone." "How old is he?" Almost 18. So he's already a grown boy and can take care of himself." "Yes, that's probably true, but I'll still call him. You planned all this, right?" It was more of an affirmative than a questioning tone. "Well, I admit, I thought it was time to take our relationship to the next level. Are you unhappy with this?" "Of course not," I answered immediately. "Did I look unhappy?" She giggled, pulled me towards her, and kissed me with such passion that I don't think I've ever experienced before. I woke up as usual at 6:30 and suddenly realized that this was not my bed and not my home. In the darkness, I could make out the outline of Giselle, and memories of the previous night came flooding back. Good memories. Wonderful memories. I remember in the early years of my marriage to Joyce, we made love in the dark until I convinced her that I wanted to see her at that moment. With Giselle, it was different. It seemed to me that we could make love even on the kitchen table in broad daylight. She was much more liberated than Joyce then, and even now, to be honest. I had a lot to learn about Giselle. I always like to start the morning with tenderness, and this day was no exception. We made love, and I wasn't entirely sure if she was fully awake. She was so easy to be around, in and out of bed. I must admit that she was the one who made the choice in favor of our relationship, but I was not far behind. Giselle and I sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee while she warmed up the muffins. It was still early, a quiet Sunday morning. However, every February morning in the hills overlooking Wenatchee was just as calm. We made love for the first time, Yana caught us, and then we fell asleep naked, which was new to me. I had a feeling that there would be many more firsts in our relationship. I pulled on my panties and Giselle gave me a guest robe from the bathroom closet. She herself was also wearing a robe. We went straight to the bedroom last night, so it was only now that I started looking at her big ranch-style home. When I moved here, Paul built an extension for me. Previously, the house was shaped like the letter L, but now it is shaped like the letter U. I have my own bedroom and bathroom. Paul sleeps on the other side of the house, and Jana's room is next to the shared bathroom, right in front of the kitchen. "When she wakes up, I'll give you a tour," she said. "I'm already awake," announced the girl who entered the kitchen in a robe and large slippers. "Good morning, Aunt Giselle," she said sleepily, hugging the woman from behind and kissing her on the cheek. "Good morning, dear." Giselle watched my reaction. "Good morning, Jeff," Yana said with a smile and also kissed me on the cheek. "What, even without a hug?" I joked, immediately wondering if it was a mistake. She giggled and walked over to me and hugged me tightly, adding another peck on the cheek. "How was your date?" asked Giselle. "Not as good as yours," she replied with a sly smile. Her aunt ignored the remark, and we continued with breakfast. I couldn't believe how much Yana had changed. It was amazing. Giselle claimed that this was my fault, But in my opinion, it was all a combination of factors. A new job, Jimmy, increased self-confidence. Anyway, she was a charming girl with a brilliant mind, and we were damn lucky to have her working in the workshop. Over the next 6 weeks, Jael and I began meeting regularly, and as our relationship progressed, she increasingly brought up my past and how I was coping with it. She did not criticize me, but asked questions why I acted this way and not otherwise. It took me a while to understand what this was all about, but eventually it dawned on me. "You still think I haven't fully let Joyce go, do you?" I asked her one evening. We sat on the sofa in the living room and talked about our day. In a way, yes, she is still with you, like a ghost of the past. There are times when it comes out and you have to deal with it. You've gotten really good at hiding it, but sooner or later, Jeff, you're going to have to deal with it completely. I thought about her words and realized that she was right. From time to time, I found myself comparing them to Joyce or wondering what she would have said on this or that occasion. I really needed to exorcise this ghost. "What do you think I should do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I think you should go to Dublin and see her. Try to find out what happened to her. Maybe once you get an explanation, you'll finally let it go. It's not destroying us, Jeff, but it is there. I feel it." "There's an old saying that great minds think alike," I said. "I was just about to discuss this with you. I was almost sure that I would have to do this." "There are no guarantees," she added, "but I think you should try." I nodded. It's good that we came to an agreement. I was afraid that she might take my visit differently, perhaps thinking that I wanted to get back together with Joyce when she was released. This will never happen. Nora and Mike want to do it too, but it's too early for Nora. Mike said there is a procedure. You can't just come to the gate and enter. I'll deal with this immediately. She hugged me. "You're right. Great minds think alike." But the second part of this quote sounds something like this: "like fools." I laughed, turning back to her. "Which option do you like best?" "I don't care, honey. The main thing is that we are on the same wavelength. The rest doesn't matter." I have reviewed the FCI Dublin visiting rules and applied online for permission to visit. To get it, I also needed permission from Joyce. I thought this might be an obstacle, but after a few days I already had everything I needed. Now all that was left was to plan the trip. I discussed this with Jael, Terry, and, of course, Ross. He'll stay with Nora and Mike, and Terry will cover me with Red and Annie. I was planning to leave on Thursday. The trip would take 2 days. I would meet Joyce on Saturday and then head to Oregon. The plan was to get to Matt's campus by Sunday morning and return home on Monday. Terry, Annie, and Red could take care of business on Thursday and Friday, and Jonna and Jimmy could cover for me on Saturday. On Thursday, I drove to Cottage Grove and checked into a motel. I didn't really sleep that night. All kinds of scenarios of our meeting with Joyce were spinning in my head. Will we be divided as they show in the movies? Hardly. Apparently, there are halls and even open areas where you can talk quietly. Even so, I had too many questions, and I wondered how many of them Joyce would be willing to answer. Dunsmuir Pass on I-5 through the Siskiyou Mountains was dry and ice-free, a rarity for late February. I drove quickly and reached the Dublin area by 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I booked a hotel in Pleasanton. I was told that this place was better, but at first glance it turned out to be so. I spent the remaining time walking around the city and the shopping center. In the evening, I chose a restaurant for dinner and then returned to the motel to relax and watch TV. The sleepless night made itself felt. After 9, I fell asleep, but at 1 in the morning, I was woken up by a particularly annoying voice from a commercial. I got up, went to the toilet, washed my face, brushed my teeth, undressed my underwear, and climbed under the covers. I fell asleep instantly and woke up according to my usual schedule at 6:30 in the morning. Visiting hours began at 8 in the morning and ended at 2 in the afternoon. I showered, got dressed, checked out of the motel, had breakfast at a roadside cafe, and headed to the prison. At the entrance, I showed my ID. I was marked on the list, and my time of arrival was recorded. I was then directed to the parking lot and visitor entrance. The building turned out to be brighter and more modern than I expected. It was surrounded by a metal fence with barbed wire at the top. It was undoubtedly a prison, and nothing in it could instill a sense of comfort in the prisoners. I stood in line for several minutes, then showed my pass and entered the room, which was called the hall. Since Joyce was still my legal wife, I was allowed to hug her and even kiss her when we met and goodbye, but no more. I chose just a hug. "Hello, Joyce. How are you?" "I can handle it, Jeff. It's not easy when every minute of your life is planned for you, but it's better than being on the run, better than constantly looking over your shoulder, afraid that they will come for you." I nodded, indicating that I understood her, but said nothing, allowing her to continue. I, I want to apologize, Jeff. I cannot justify either my actions or my behavior. I wish I could explain why I did what I did. It was partly greed, partly stupidity, partly desperation. I tried to understand myself, but I couldn't find any meaning in it. I stole the money and then decided I had to protect you and the boys. The only thing that came to my mind was to divorce you and give you the opportunity to move on. I needed to convince you that I was serious, so I refused to reveal the location or the amount of money. I knew you would want to take the boys with you, and I didn't stop it when you took them to Orondo. I was going to leave at the end of the summer. I felt that an audit of the company was coming again, and I realized that my time was up. I ran away, first to Mexico, then to Brazil. A complete waste of time. I hated both countries. I was a prisoner even before I was arrested. When the Brazilian authorities detained me, it was almost a relief. "Why did you take this money, Joyce?" I asked. "You already made great money at Cock. You were paid an excellent salary, good bonuses." "Why?" "Greed, Jeff. Good things are never enough, but more is always better." Yes, and it was too simple. I had access to everything. They trusted me. At first, I just wanted to put my own money into a special savings account for us. It was supposed to be a surprise for the future. I knew you wanted to invest in Terry's business, so I could help you. But I continued to watch it grow, and every year it became more and more. I didn't even think about what I was doing, how I was deceiving you and the boys. And then, at some point that I will never understand, I decided that I could really change something. I began to hide part of the income from loans and add them to my legal earnings. I did this for several months when I suddenly realized that there was no turning back. Sooner or later, auditors or someone else will notice this, and I will not be able to provide an explanation. That's when I went crazy, Jeff. That's when I came up with this stupid plan to divorce you and then leave the country. It seemed to me that I could find some warm place and spend the rest of my life in relative prosperity. How wrong I was. I sat and absorbed every word she said. I understood the meaning of what was said, but her motives and actions were so uncharacteristic of Joyce that I still could not fully understand how it had happened in the first place. "Pete told me you didn't pay all the money back, Joyce. He said it could affect your parole." "I know. I missed the opportunity, but I'll probably return them after all, when I can accurately separate what was rightfully mine from what I stole. At least I'll have something left to start my life over when I leave here." "I don't think it works that way, Joyce. I think they'll want everything back, whether it was legal or not. If you don't return the money, it will haunt you even after your release, and you will never find peace." She nodded. I guessed about it, but still hoped. In any case, now I'm going to see a prison psychologist and plan to take several courses. When I'm released, I want to have at least some chance of a normal life, even if it's without you and without the boys. I sat and looked at her, wondering what to say. I knew how I felt, but what should I tell her? Joyce, our divorce will be finalized next month. More precisely, in a couple of weeks. I'm sorry, but I don't see the possibility of being together again. Too much has happened, and emotionally we will not be able to restore what was. I know, Jeff. I ruined everything. Understand. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry I did this to you, to the boys, to my parents. I feel bad about this, but nothing can be changed. Forget about me and move on with your life. You are still young and attractive, and I am sure that some woman will not miss the chance to have you. I decided not to tell her about Jael. She didn't need another burden on top of everything else she had to deal with. As we sat in that brightly lit room, I felt something inside me being released. I imagined this meeting in many ways, but in none of my scenarios was it as calm and healing as it actually turned out to be. Joyce made a mistake that can no longer be undone. She admitted it to herself and didn't expect any sympathy in return. I wasn't entirely sure, but it felt like my inner ghosts had finally disappeared. When our time was up, I hugged her and actually kissed her this time. Jeff, please don't come again. I needed to see you to tell you it wasn't your fault and to ask for forgiveness from you and our family. I've already told the authorities that I don't want to see the boys. I don't think I can handle it, and I'm not sure they can. I understand, Joyce. Good luck. Goodbye. I turned around and left the hall, feeling tears running down my cheeks. No matter what she did, she was my wife and lover for 20 years. I will remember the good times, but it's over, once and for all. I was only a few hours away from Eugene when I stopped in Medford, Oregon. I had called Matt earlier to confirm that I would be at his dorm around 10 in the morning. That evening, I called Jael from my motel room. Hello, my love. How are you? Hello, Jeff. Everything is fine. And you? Better than I expected. You were right. I needed to do this. Joyce, too. She knows it's over and we'll never be together. She is receiving counseling and plans to study. I hope when she gets out, she can start a new life. I'm glad, Jeff. Now, maybe we can focus on each other. I think that's a damn good idea, honey. Damn good idea. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.